Sword of Coming Chapter 1181. Chapter 1181. It turned out to be the protector Chao Gingxin came to a house in a secluded alley in the capital, took out a key, opened the courtyard door, and entered the courtyard 2 times. Just faster. This is the first time that Chao Gingxin has stepped into the courtyard. He has been denied entry a few times before, because someone instructed the then Du Zhao Chao in a secret letter that he will come here in the future when someone succeeds as the national teacher of Dali. While opening the courtyard, a meeting was held, but what was being discussed and who was called was not explained in the letter. The other party just gave Chao Gingxin a title that did not receive royal salaries and was not included in the official records of the court. The small water well, Chao Gingxin squatted at the wellhead and looked inside for a while. It was dark, it didn't look like there was a corpse, and it didn't look like the entrance to a certain land dragon palace. Then he threw a stone in and made a thud. Fortunately, he could draw water and fetch water. Chao Gingxin went to the utility room to get a broom and dustpan, and began to clean the courtyard. After Chao Gingxin was busy with all this, he sat at the wellhead, took off the small purple gourd jug with a bright pulp on his waist, pulled off the wine stopper, and raised his head to drink a sip of the Changchun wine bestowed by the palace. There is a pair of Spring Festival couplets pasted at the entrance of the main house, but as the years go by, the wind, rain and the scorching sun have exposed them year after year. First half. There is no in the next pen, and people follow what they say. Heaven will die in gentleness, and the manifesto of the Tao is in me, and it is beneficial to open the book, and gentleness is here. Chao Gingxin drank about 3 or 2 wines, but did not think about how to complete the content of the couplet, so he gave up angrily. According to the cumbersome method on the letter, pouring spiritual energy into the jade tablet is like writing the word earthly branch in different stroke sequences. After a while, 2 groups of people came to the small courtyard one after another. Chao Gung looked calm. This was what he had thought about before he was about to call someone. He had to pretend to be a little immortal on the mountain. When he found that Zhou Haichao was among them, he looked a little unnatural, just because his uncle Chao Ping had called Chao Gingxin to the study before going to the Sunfall Ferry in the wild world. One of the things was that let the eldest Chao Gingxin marry his biological son. If he waits for Chao Ping to return to Dali, he still does not give a word. I believe that Chao Ping will definitely pull out the jade belt around his waist and let Chao Shilang eat a full meal similar to fried pork with bamboo whips. At that time Chao Gingxin took this great female master as a shield, and never thought that Chao Ping would take it seriously. There are no officials in the hospital. So when Chao Gingxin saw the Prince Song Su, he didn't get up to say hello. Yuan Huajing asked, Chao Gingxin, how do you own this jade card? Because according to the rules of the Earth Branch, seeing this jade card is like seeing Cui Yu. Yu Yu smiled and said, it's just been passed, and it will be handed over to Mr. Chen soon. Is this a return to the original owner? Chao Gingxin smiled and said, that's not necessarily true. But a servant of the Ministry of Personnel can take care of the 12 of you. You seem to have lost a bit. There are a lot of talents, and the mysterious masters in the yard are immortal. A descendant of the Yuan clan of Shangzhou Kingdom, Yuan Huajing, Yuanyingjing sword cultivator. Song Su, the Prince of Dali, was a swordsman in the Jindanjing realm. Han Zhoujin, a female formation master from Shingao Sect's Qingtan Blessed Land. Yu Yu, a military cultivator from the Yu clan of Shangzhou Kingdom. Capital Road Records, Zhurong Rinshi, Guling Translation Bureau Novice, After the Awakening. Sui Lin, a Qi trainer from the Yinyang family. Confucian scholar Lu Hui. Ghost Repair, Change Yen. A young man from a strange origin, Go Cun. Hard Work. Zhou Haijing, the only pure warrior, a seaside fisherman, and a mountain master. Chao Gingxin only knew more than half of the 12 earthly branches of Dali. After a while, a blue shirt appeared in the alley, with his fingers bent, he knocked gently on the courtyard door, and then led Xiao Mo, crossed the threshold into the courtyard, and Xiao Mo gently closed the courtyard door. Chao Gingxin got up and said with a smile, "Mr. Qin, I didn't expect us to meet again so soon." Chen Pingan shook his sleeves, the smell of alcohol drifted away in the wind, and said with a smile, "I didn't show courtesy to Shirlang Chao, I just took Lu Su and the others to the Changpu River restaurant, and I never thought of reporting the name of Shirlang Chao there. Not only do not give a discount, but also double the amount of drinking. They won't let us go. I said it's okay to not keep accounts. A booze debt is one." Even Yuan Huajing couldn't help but glance at Chao Gingxin. Lu Hui and Kushu had suffered a lot on Mr. Chen's side, and they almost didn't give Chao Shirlang a thumbs up. This daring Chao Shirlang really wants to die. You said that it's not good for you to cheat, and dare to cheat this Mr. Qin. As far as Lu Hui is concerned, Chen Pingan's flower blossom, which resembles both boxing and swordsmanship, was instantly pierced by dozens of long swords. There is also a female ghost who changed her appearance. At that time, I didn't see how that Chen Pingan pity Xiangxiu, and chopped it up on the spot with a sword move Pianyue said to be self-created. Only Zhou Haichao, who entered the industry late, didn't know the seriousness of the benefits for the time being, and she didn't know the consequences of provoking Chen Pingan. So she noticed that the atmosphere in the hospital was not right, so she was more curious. The geniuses among these geniuses are not very arrogant on my side. Why is seeing Chen Pingan like a mouse seeing a cat today? As for Chao Gingxin said with embarrassment, is retribution coming so quickly? Chen Pingan explained to them, Xiao Mo said that you suddenly gathered in one place, and I was a little curious. Since it was Shirlang Chao who called you here, I have nothing to do with me. Chao Gingxin hurriedly said, it's related, Mr. Chen doesn't want to stay out of it, Cui Guoshi has something to say, let me speak publicly in front of both of you. Go Cun is a lively person, so he went to the house and moved a bench over, wanting to give Mr. Chen a place to sit. As a result, he was snatched by Gai Yen and placed beside Chen Pingan. Just relying on Mr. Chen's good words in the military yamen, he changed the innkeeper to Yen, not to mention moving a bench, as long as Mr. Chen is willing, she can sit on her. When she was putting down the bench, she saw the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes greet her with a smile, and she smiled back. Gai Yen only knew that he was Mr. Chen's personal squire, who once entered the palace together to meet the Queen Mother. Chen Pingan and Gai Yen thanked him, sat on the bench, and said with a smile, tell me about it, I'll listen. Chao Gingxin said, just 2 sentences, one sentence is for Yuan Jianxian and the others. Those who have waste cards in the courtyard today will be under my jurisdiction in the future, not under the deployment of the new national teacher of Doli, but the new national teacher can make suggestions, that's all. The second sentence was addressed to Mr. Qin. Actually, Cui Guoshi's letter didn't mention his name. I'll repeat it again. I'll say what I wrote in the letter, you're not black enough, and you're not ruthless enough. This group of people can't be used well at all, just like a sword in the sheath, it will only wear away the sword's wool for a long time, and they will only lose their vitality, and they will be reduced to tasteless and unfortunate useless ribs. Chen Pingan nodded, wrapped his arms around his sleeves and smiled, and then asked, Brother Cui thinks I can't do it, but you can do it? Chao Gung's heart choked for a while. This question is not easy to answer. Yu Ye's eyes were shining brightly, and she said in her heart, come here, bet. I bet that Mr. Qin will cut Chao Gingxin, at least hand out a sword or reward a punch. Gai Yen immediately echoed, this time, let's stop gambling, and bet that the Changchun Palace wine is ready. Chen Pingan stretched out his hand, bring that letter over and have a look. Before going to Changpu River for a drink, of course, I trusted Chao Duzhao, who was an official in my hometown and was well known. It's hard to say now. Chen Pingon took the squire out of the yard and gradually walked out of the alley. Chao Gingxin, who listened to the footsteps, was sure that they were far away, so he sat down on the wellhead, pulled off his collar and fanned the wind, and started drinking and beating himself up. Go Cun walked over to the bench and wanted to move back to the original position, but was stopped by Gai Yen. Go Cun looked puzzled, and Gai Yen said confidently that she was going to move to the inn to be the treasurer of the town store. Yu Yu sat on the steps outside the main house door and praised, "Chow double, yes, very good." Yu Yu was young and her family was not low. She had long heard of Chao Gingxin, Yuan Jingding, and Lu Sunmai's legendary deeds that belonged to the previous generation in Ichi Lane and Cheer Street, where wealthy and aristocratic families gathered. The younger generation, like Xiao Duanming, all know that Chao Gingxin used to make a fortune by selling pornographic novels and pictures. When Chao Gingxin went to the local government, the old people were relieved, and this scourge finally passed. Chao Gingxin said helplessly, "This nickname is not very pleasant." Yu Yu smiled and said, "It sounds better than Chao Thief." It turned out that among the two generations who cared about Qixiang and Cheer Street, they were used to calling Chao Gingxin a Chao Thief. Zhou Haichao leaned against the doorpost of a wing with his arms around his chest, and asked with a smile, what Chao Shilang just said was the truth. Chao Gingxin glanced at the woman's arm, but didn't dare to look at it any more, and said with a wry smile, "There are fake wines in the wine, not to mention the words spoken." Song Su said, "Your approach has too many sequelae. No matter how secretive we are, today's Guanhu Academy is not a fool." Chao Gingxin smiled, "It's just a fool." Chen Guoshi sighed, "I have to say, I don't believe it myself. What do you believe?" Zhou Haichao joked, "Chao Gingxin, you are a servant, how can you talk to His Royal Highness?" Chao Gingxin smiled and dismissed it, but the dog couldn't stop eating shit, and took the opportunity to take another look at the round scenery on her side. Last time, he took Xiao Duanming to the roof to watch the arena competition, but it was too far away to see it clearly. Yuan Huajing asked, "What other orders do Shilang Chao have?" Chao Gingxin smiled and said, "Let's go back to our homes, and we will meet again if we have something to do. Since there is nothing to do today, then we will go home." Gai Yen and a group of people returned to the inn, and each practiced sword or chi in a snail shell dojo. Following Mr. Chen's suggestion, Gai Yen took the initiative to chat with Zhou Haichao about the idea of doing business in partnership and making the inn business bigger together. Zhou Haichao's eyes lit up, but he didn't say whether it was okay or not. He directly talked to Gayan about how to split the bill. She opened her mouth wide and wanted to split the bill with Gayan 55. If I had heard that Zhou Haichao was so unprofessional before, Gayan would have let her get out of the way. Today, Gayan felt confident and didn't panic at all, so he talked about some of his experiences, and told Zhou Haichao what the inn would be next. How to operate a book of business. Zhou Haichao was surprised to hear that, if he changed his face to this fool, could he have been overtaken by a ghost? No, she is a ghost herself. That change Yen is suddenly enlightened, like a god. It's almost like asking boxing in the arena. Once the momentum is weak, it will be difficult to bargain. Zhou Haichao has to take a step back, and she and Gayan Sanchi Kai. Then there was a young female nun who had just been removed from the door, and came to discuss the matter with the shopkeeper, and said that a few distinguished guests from other towns in Beiju Luzhou, a juvenile figure, asked if she could go directly to the inn. By the two houses near the water here, Luzhou Moon and Keiyunjian, as long as the inn nods and sells these two houses to them, they guarantee that they can stay at most 1 month within a year, and the remaining 11 months, or longer, the inn can be open to the outside world. As for other guests staying at the top, the receipt is correct, and all the income goes to the inn. Gai Yan was stunned for a moment. Have you met such a big idiot who has so much money that he has nowhere to spend? Zhou Haijing asked, what are their identities? The young female cultivator said, Yuan Xian, Fan Yu, Lu Wuding and the Sanlang Temple. The mule, the horse, the river and the Liuxiu. Zhou Haijing grinned and said, good guy, the Yuan family of the Sanlang Temple and the Luoma Heliu clan are all the wealthiest people in their Beiju Luzhou rank. They must double the original price and then double it again. However, Gai Yen said to the young female nun, just tell the steward and sell it to them at the cost price. Zhou Haijing said angrily, Gayan, if you have money but don't make money, your brain is flooded. Gai Yen said, Lu Su has been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Fan Yu has been to the battlefield of Ardali accompanying capital. Zhou Haijing stared straight at Gai Yen. Gai Yen said, look at what I do, just break up with you, go back to your own house, and I will only earn my little money from now on. However, Zhou Haijing smiled suddenly, it's all right, you are the shopkeeper, I'm just the second shopkeeper, you have the final say. I used to think you were stupid, so I didn't know how to make money. Gai Yen smiled and asked, what about now? Zhou Haijing said, it's really stupid. Gai Yan's eyebrows stood upright, say it again. Zhou Haijing asked the female nun to chat with the inn steward, then winked at Gayan, and said with a smile, how about that bench that was moved from the small courtyard, how about you lend me a seat? Wen Yun and Xian Qi. Gai Yan glared and said, you mother-in-law, you are so serious. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, who was at the door of the house, when he saw Mr. Qin, he was like a tiger and a sheep, and he tried his best to get on the other side. Gai Yan blushed and said, isn't that a joke with Mr. Qin? Zhou Haijing lowered his voice and said, I think Chen Pingan is still a young child. Gai Yan waved her sleeves and closed the door, it's not good to have a good chat. Leaving that alley, Chen Pingan took Xiao Mo to stroll around the capital. Xiao Mo said, Chief Shou asked Wei Shanjun to help and has returned to Luopao Mountain. In examining the ripples of the morale machine of Qi training and the flow of spiritual Qi in the world, Xiao Mo is actually better than Bai Jing. It is precisely because of this housekeeping skill that he and Bai Jing will only have 3 sword fights 10,000 years ago, otherwise not to mention being forced to lead the sword in 3 battles, 30 battles are possible. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, is it at the Changchun Palace, where dumplings were made? Chief Shou, because of his face, had to scold him or beat him, and ran away. I remember the first time I visited Luzhou in Beiju, I heard that Jiang Shangjin was notorious for many deeds there. For example, there is a mountaintop that only provokes 1 female cultivator, and a Jianghu sect only deceives 1 female hero. What a stinky bug. If Jiang Shangjin didn't use a pseudonym as the chief worshipper, Chen Pingan could not imagine the reputation of Luopao Mountain on Baoping, Tongye and Baijula Mountains. Xiao Mo smiled, I don't know the specific inside story. He still respects Chief Shou very much. When the sun's downfall has not yet been revealed, Chief Shou is always spending money there, not icing on the cake, but giving help in the snow. It is better to give a piece of money in difficult times than a piece of gold. What's more, at that time, Chief Shou's money was Gu Ye's money. So Xiao Mo felt that unless the son made a decision, who would dare to compete with Chief Shou in the future, Xiao Mo was the first to refuse. Before Xiago returned from the fire temple, Xiao Mo wondered, I don't know if Xiago and that Aunt Feng have anything to talk about. I remember that they had a normal relationship before. Chen Pingan smiled and said, women and women, talking about men, there are no taboos. Men mention women and say some dirty words. Compared with them, it is like a child playing a house. Xiao Mo sincerely praised, young master even understands this. Chen Pingan hurriedly shook his head and clarified, of course I don't understand, I heard what the old cook told Chief Shou and me Daijiangxian, they are the top experts, and I will leave if I hear it occasionally. Chen Pingan turned to his heartfelt words and asked, Xiao Mo, I really thought about it. I want to join the genealogy of the ancestors of Luopao Mountain and become a named worshipper of Ji Sifeng. Xiao Mo asked with a smile, young master shouldn't be Xiago, right? Chen Pingan said, Xiago has always been just by Jing, a genealogical identity of a mighty world. She can't be restrained at all. Her identity and Taoism are the same. She wants to be the second seat of worship, just like a joke. Of course Luopao Mountain really needs an extra Ascension Realm pure sword repairer. To be precise, Haran world can keep Xiago, and the wild world can go to one less by Jing. I know this, and Xiago also knows it. Du Ming, just because you are here, I won't break it with her. Xiao Mo asked suspiciously, young master can't trust me. Chen Pingan laughed angrily. Why, Mr. Mo only speaks at critical moments, isn't it a waste of his previous achievements? Xiao Mo laughed dumbly. It doesn't matter to me whether you want to join the Jinyu genealogy of the ancestral master hall or not. In the end, Ji Sifeng will discuss matters, whether there is a record or not. You are all a little street. Chen Pingan said, but for you, more or less, it is a layer of restraint. There happened to be a child nearby who released paper kites, and Chen Pingan pointed to the paper kites in the sky in the distance. You are pure sword cultivators, the sky is high and the earth is wide, and you should be free and unfettered. Then every kind of nostalgia, hatred, concern, nostalgia, and remembrance of ours is like a thread of paper kite, and it will be remembered with a gentle pull. When thoughts come together, the mind of the Tao ripples like water. It's easy to stop the thoughts, but it's hard to stop them. Xiao Mo thought about it carefully. I was under a tree and listened to the Buddha and an anonymous man talking about the Dharma. The latter said that others were purgatory in the world, but the Buddha said that a lotus flower opened in the world because of this. Chen Pingan was speechless for a long time. I forgot who said it. Making mistakes and forgetting is a kind of beauty, a kind of tenderness with compassion, and it belongs to extrajudicial grace. Xiao Mo said softly, young master. Chen Pingan smiled and said helplessly, you have moved out of the Buddha, what else can I say? Xiago appeared in front of the road and handed them a few bucket cakes wrapped in oil paper, delicious. Chen Pingan took the bucket of cake and asked, are you giving me any money? Xiago snorted and patted his mink hat, forget it. She also thought that in the boundary of our Dali capital, if you drink and eat, and report the name of the mountain master or the national teacher, you don't need to pay. Misunderstood ha. She used to be in Beiju Luzhou before. She was not like this. She went to the mountains to collect herbs, and set up a street stall in the mountain market. Xiago immediately turned around and ran away. On the side of the bucket cake stand, which has a very good business, the man scolded and looked at an honest little girl. How could she be a liar? The sable-cap girl touched a small piece of silver from her sleeve, and the man took it. He immediately smiled, and hurriedly said that the guest official is welcome to come again. Back at Chen Pingan and the others, Xiago nibbled at the only piece of dried plum, vegetable and meat bucket cake left in his hand, and said vaguely, Shanju, Aunt Feng asked you to go to Baihua Blessed Land earlier, and if you don't go, she won't need your help. It's time to take it back. Chen Pingan heard what Aunt Feng meant and said, I see, I must go early. Anyway, as long as it's not her heartfelt words, Aunt Feng can definitely hear it. Xiago said, and Aunt Feng asked me to report the good news to the mountain owner. There is no objection to the discussion about the mountain owner becoming a Confucian gentleman at the Confucian temple. Chen Pingan was a little strange. No matter how bold Aunt Feng was, she couldn't eavesdrop on the discussions of the Zhongtu Confucian temple. Having said that, Xiago stretched out his hand. Chen Pingan took out a piece of silver that he carried with him and placed it on the palm of the sable-cap girl. Xiao Mo looked bewildered. Xiago grinned and said, "A lot of the novels of talented and beautiful women have already been written. The scholars who are rushing to the capital, who have passed the Jinshu examination, and those who come to the door to announce the good news, are rewarded with money." Xiao Mo was a little helpless. "You really have the face to accept, the sun really gives." Xiago got the money and smiled brightly. Aunt Feng just said that it was Mao Sai from the Book of Rites Academy, and he disliked Fijian slow message delivery, so after the discussion was over and he walked out of the Confucian temple, Mao Sai shouted, "Her divine name, ask her to help report the letter." Chen Pingan's eyes lit up. Xiago laughed and helped to express the thoughts of the owner of the mountain. "It's the only new way of making money in the world." Chen Pingan sighed, "Nonsense, how dare you bother Aunt Feng." In fact, Xiao Mo feels more and more that Xiago is in Luopao Mountain. With or without him, Xiao Mo is the same. She is very much like the locals, and she lives happily every day. Xiago said in a low voice, Xiao Mo, Aunt Feng said, His Majesty the Emperor took a jar of Changchun Palace wine and fished Chao Shilang to go to the Banzhong on duty, just like Luopa Mountain took you to fish me. In fact, at the Huishan Temple's grape trellis, she chatted with Aunt Feng, but it was more exciting than that. It was because they, inadvertently, overheard Xiao Mo's chat with the owner of the mountain, and Aunt Feng gave her this for nothing. Way to go. Xiao Mo asked, Aren't you angry when you heard it? Xiago tilted his sable hat, Why are you angry? I think it's a good word. Changchun Palace Fairy Brew is a good wine that everyone likes. It's so good that after drinking it, the wine jar will be kept. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I'm still here, you're almost there. Xiago grinned and said, Aunt Feng also said that Mao Sai said that the Confucian temple has even finalized the gift for you. Chen Pingan asked curiously, which sentence is it? Confucian disciples, as long as they become sages or gentlemen of the academy, can receive a gift from the academy mountain chief or a sage to accompany the sages. If you are serving as an academy sacrificial wine, a minister of industry, or a mountain leader of the Confucian 72 Academy, you will be able to receive the words of Lixing, Yaxing and Wenxing. If you are the leader of the Confucian temple with the first and third deputy, it is said that the most holy teacher personally cut and deleted a sentence of beautiful meaning from a certain book. Xiago looked playful, glanced at Shanju Qin, and asked, The Shanju is so good at guessing his mind, do you need me to tell me? Chen Pingan smiled and said, Why ask the question when you know it? Xiao Mo was confused. Xiago nodded and said, Mao Sai explained it together. It seems that Master Wenxing read a sentence from a certain book on the other side of the book, because there is a red pen next to the sentence in the book. Chen Pingan nodded, already guessing the answer. Sure enough, what Xiago said was exactly as Chen Pingan expected. His heart moved slightly, and then he thought about it, but Chen Pingan broke up the ripples in his heart. Chen Pingan changed the subject and said to them in his heart, Xiao Mo, I have discussed with Zhang Jiao, and he will help me pass a message to Senior Brother Jun Qian. Senior Brother Jun Qian will rush back to Howren World soon. I have already written a letter. A letter sent to the Confucian Temple, to let you take a trip to the bright moon in the Qingming world, so that you can reminisce with the old master. You can stay there for a while, don't rush back to Luopao Mountain, I'm going to retreat soon anyway. Xiago asked tentatively, Mountain Master, can I accompany Xiao Mo? Chen Pingan smiled and said, I wrote it in the letter, but it is hard to say whether it will be rejected by the Confucian Temple. Xiao Mo said, Xiago, you'd better stay in the mountains, otherwise I won't feel relieved to leave. When I'm not with you, you have to help protect the customs. He and the cave owner of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotan are indeed close friends who regard each other as confidants. Just as Chen Pingan was about to speak, Xiago had already stopped abruptly, straightened his chest like his own right guardian, and said solemnly, If there is a slight misunderstanding, bring your head up and see Xiao Mo. Xiao Mo laughed softly and said, everything is fine. The young master will definitely be able to break through the situation smoothly, you just need to accompany the millet and eat melon seeds. Xiago just wanted to speak. Chen Pingon said, Miss Xia, when you hear this kind of heartwarming words that are better than love words, can't you squeeze out a few tears? You two just care about me and me all the way, when I, the mountain master, don't exist, right? I can't disgust you. Xiago sighed and said understandingly, it seems that the mountain master wants to be the mountain master's wife. Xiao Mo smiled and nodded, rarely echoing Xiago once, it's human nature, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Shut up. Chen Pingon, who was walking among them, seemed to be furious, stretched out his arms and put his arms around Xiao Mo's neck, and held down the sable hat on Xiago's head with one hand. In this picture, seeing Aunt Feng under the grape trellis in the fire temple, I just felt it was an eye-opener. On the road, Xiao Mo smiled all over, Xiago pursed his lips, and Chen Pingon was very calm, just like a teenager. Aunt Feng, who was sitting on top of Shi Dang, closed the book. She envied them. No matter who it is, it will be the first to enter the 14 realms. The other two, no matter where or in the world, if there is a difficulty to overcome, it must be Jinguang who will arrive first. After a while, Jinxiu will arrive later. Chen Pingon did not ask Wei Shanjun to help, but chose to take a ferry back to Nujiadu. After all, Wei Shanjun must be busy holding a night banquet right now. In the evening, Chen Pingon took Xiao Mo and sat on the roof of the ferry to drink together. Xiago went to buy a few snacks and sat beside Xiao Mo. She complained a lot, and the price was too embarrassing. Xiago was the most heroic in drinking, but he was not good at persuading him to drink. She quickly fell back and said that she couldn't drink any more, she would have to drink any more. She laughed and looked at Xiao Mo. The bright moon is bright and reunited, and the moonlight shines long and far away from people. The clouds overshadowed the moon, hazy. Xiaomo picked up a peanut, chewed it carefully, and asked in his heart, young master has often forgotten something recently, and he only remembered it after talking to someone. Is it to prepare for retreat? Chen Pingon smiled and nodded, thoughts give rise to thoughts, and hair grows like 100 flowers all the way. It's hard, but it's hard to think about it. You can ask me any question, such as what we saw and heard in the capital of Dali. Xiao Mo smiled and asked, young master, do you still remember that gift? Heart Lake is like fishing. Hook bait is the word for gift. A catch is like a fish. Chen Pingon remembered a long list of memories about this sentence. Chen Pingon smiled and nodded. This gift from the Confucian temple comes from the Tianluan written by my husband. It is the saying that the gentleman respects those who belong to himself, but does not admire those who belong to heaven. But Chen Pingon soon forgot, he really forgot. Chen Pingon shook his head without thinking much. Xiao Mo didn't continue to say anything. He raised his glass, and Chen Pingon gently bumped against it, and said with a smile, when it comes to drinking, a glass is not as good as a bowl. The clouds on the horizon are brighter than the moon. Chen Pingon said in his heart. The self with a pair of golden eyes, he is above those gates called forgetting, jumping up and down, like a child playing a game of jumping squares. Inside a small Taoist temple in the Qingming world. Chen Song, it turned out to be me, Chen Pingon. Uncle Chang, it turns out it's you, big brother. Sort of Coming Chapter 1182. Chapter 1182. A lonely city among colorful clouds. The mountain gate of Luopa Mountain. A burly man, with a sword-backed boy wearing a tiger hat on his head, descended from the sky together. Jun Qian smiled and said, it's here. Bai Yi also glanced at the trends and knots of Luo Pao Mountain stretches of peaks, nodded and said, Feng Shui is good. Jun Qian said, the atmosphere is better. Xian Wei changed the book in his hand, got up quickly, and asked, who are the two distinguished guests? Jun Qian cupped her fists and said, my name is Lu Shilu, and I'm your senior brother Jun Qian. This is my friend, Bai Yi. Xian Wei was startled again, and then held back his laughter, his face sullen, almost unable to hold back. He had an idea, and hurriedly made a bow, bowed his head and said, the year of the Taoist priest, the Taoist named Xian Wei, thanks to the love of the mountain master. Now he is the gatekeeper of Luo Pao Mountain, and Xiao Dao has met Lu Xianchi and Bai Jianxian here. The first time I was startled, I heard that the other party turned out to be the senior brother Jun Qian of Qin Shanju, and then I was shocked when I heard that Bai Yi just looked at the other party's appearance and attire. Aware of the other party's hairpin, Jun Qian was actually taken aback. Little junior brother, who can abduct such a playful and lovely millet grain, how can you still bring this? Taoist priest. Thousands of years ago, the two sides had met each other a lot, so it could be considered that they didn't know each other. At that time, Jun Qian belonged to going to visit, of course, she never played. Fortunately, the first Taoist priest in the world had a good temper and didn't care about anything. Xian Wei straightened his waist and raised his head, wondering in his heart, why didn't the white-haired boy show up immediately? After serving as the music editor, in the past, as long as a guest came to the door, the white-haired boy was guaranteed to be there at the first time. Why did he desert today? Jun Qian asked with a smile, Master Xian Wei, where are our millets? Wei Xian replied with a smile, today's morning class on the mountain patrol has ended. Recently, I like to go to Huanghu Mountain to patrol. Most of the time I went there. Jun Qian snorted, little junior brother seems to have a lot of big people coming to this mountain recently. Xian Wei thought about it for a while, and still said something to the handsome young man, Bai Jianxian, the name is good. Bai also asked, how? Xian Wei was a little embarrassed, what should I say? Originally it was a polite remark, what do you want Xiao Dao to say? The scene was a little stiff, but unfortunately Jiao Lao Shinxian, who never knew what the cold scene was in the world, was not there. Jun Qian explained with a smile, Xian Wei Daoist, he is Bai Yi. Xian Wei felt helpless, the teenagers all claimed to be Bai Yi, and he didn't call him anything. Jun Qian said, there is an unwritten rule that you should drink a cup of tea before climbing a mountain. How do you say it? Bai Yi said, then do as the locals do. Jun Qian took Bai Yi to the table and sat down. In fact, Jun Qian just wanted to be here, drinking a cup of melon seeds while drinking tea, so she had to wait for the little girl who was the right protector of Luo Pao Mountain for her younger brother. As for what his friend Bai thinks, it doesn't matter anyway. A little girl in black seemed to have received a message, and hurriedly climbed the mountain from the back mountain, then passed the top of Jilin Peak, and flew all the way down the mountain. Senior brother Zhua of the Good Man Mountain Master, I have seen it for a long time. The rumors from the outside world are all deceptive. How can I have a bad temper? It's a sword fairy with a big table. That Mr. Jun Qian is equally amazing, so it will be more friendly. There is also a pair of fists with big bowls, just like the book says, the heroes go all over the world, and their fists are invincible all over the world. Luo Pao Mountain's right protector, after all, is a Qi trainer, and he ran with sweat all over his head. Behind the little girl in black, followed by a boy with white hair. Without the grains of millet standing in the way, the editorial officer really didn't dare to show up today. It was the white-haired boy who carried the millet to the foot of the back mountain, but the millet said to put it down, and insisted on running all the way to the gate of the front mountain. The white-haired boy had no choice but to run like the wheel of a car on two legs with a grain of millet. The millet ran faster and faster, past the mountain gate archway, stood still and said with a grin, "Mr. Junqian, it's coming." Junqian had already stood up and said with a smile, "Xiaoli, it'll keep you waiting." Junqian glanced at Bai Yi, who felt helpless and had to stand up. Millet Grain looked at the young man wearing a tiger hat. His face was strained, and his two pale yellow brows were wrinkled. Although the little girl was actually holding back her laughter, to outsiders, it might be more like she was sulking. Bai also seemed to find it interesting, and said with a smile, "If you want to laugh, just laugh." Millet scratched her face, then shook her head vigorously like a rattle. It is rare for the white-haired boy to be so restrained, and he said timidly, "Mr. Junqian, and this Bai. Immortal Master, I am the editor of the genealogy. According to the rules of our mountain, record a name." Bai Yi said, "My name is Bai Yi, a native of Hauran Middle-earth Shenzhou, and now I practice in King Mingshan's Angsuanda Temple." Millet snorted. She secretly gave a thumbs up to Mr. Junqian. When Xian Wei heard the words, his body crooked, he fell directly from the bamboo chair to the ground, accidentally dropped the book from his sleeve, and kicked him towards Brother Daifeng's house with lightning speed. Yemo felt so disrespectful to the book, so he tiptoed over there, turned his back to the table, picked up the book, sighed, patted it lightly, and put it in his sleeve. He took out a sage book from the other sleeve, then turned around, pretended to hold it in his hand, and sat down on the bamboo chair again to start reading. The white-haired boy recorded the two visitors in the book, and they slipped away. Sitting at the table, there is already tea on the table to entertain guests. Daoist Xianwei is very good at handling people and things, and there is no leakage. The millet looked at Mr. Junqian, and Lu Shirlu looked at the millet. "Will it be a bit shabby?" "Just don't worry, of course not." A large handful of melon seeds from the sleeves of millet grains were piled up on Bai Ye's side, and a large handful was also brought to Mr. Junqian. Then the little girl was a little embarrassed and wanted to open her beloved cotton satchel. Bai Yi smiled and gave half of the seeds to the little girl in black. Although Wei Bo wondered why Zhu Lian and Jiang Shangjin didn't show up at the mountain gate immediately, he still rushed over to the Luopa mountain table. Wei Bo bowed and said, "Wei Bo, the little of Pian Mountain, has met Mr. Lu, Mr. Bai." Jun Qian stood up and bowed to the Wei Shanjun. Bai also looked indifferent, just nodded in greeting. If he was willing to pay attention to this kind of red tape, Bai Yi would not have chosen the dojo on the island that was solitary overseas. Wei Bo asked, "Do you want Shaoxin to talk to Lord Qinshan?" Jun Qian smiled and waved, "No, let the younger brother do his own business first. We don't need to pay attention to him here. Bai is so happy that no one cares." The action of the millet grains opening the cotton satchel and taking out the dried fish stopped. Jun Qian added, "Except for millet, of course." Millet grains grinned happily, handing out small dried fish. Bai also glanced at Jun Qian. Jun Qian smiled and said, "Eat, why are you standing there? I've tasted it, and it tastes pretty good." Bai also had to pick up a dried fish from the stream and chew it carefully. Seeing the little girl secretly looking at herself from the corner of her eye, she had no choice but to say, "It tastes good." The millet was excited, and took out a bag of dried fish from the cotton bag and put it on the table. She slapped the bag again and said decisively, "There's more." Bai was speechless. Jun Qian laughed. "My friend Bai Yi also has today." Lu Chen first sent a secret letter to Xian Duguan, saying that it is not too much to say that it is a family letter. Pindao and Zuan Duguan are so familiar with him, and visiting there is like going home, and the whole world knows it. As for the fact that before leaving Hauran World, he did a little favor to Master Qin Shanju, is that a help? Pindao and Qin Shanju, those are the best friends who met at the end of Qingping. Then it was a real excursion. In Nanhua City, it was rare for Lu Qin to fast, bathe, and change clothes. Along the way, Lu Qin, wearing a lotus crown, waded through the water and saw many bizarre and unimaginable things. Two robes with large sleeves dragged out dazzling colorful glass colors. It's a pity that no one can see this scene along the way. Finally, Lu Qin met a passerby, but unfortunately the other person's figure disappeared in a flash, and Lu Qin didn't have time to speak. Afterwards, I met a big barefooted man who was as big as a mountain compared to Lu Qin. Every time he took a step, there was a thunderous vibration. The water splashed under his feet was often mixed with countless glass splashing in all directions. Fragments. Lu Qin rolled up his sleeves and pocketed a few, nearby, pieces of slightly larger glass. Lu Qin and the fellow Taoist who didn't know whether to go to the future or return to the past laughed and thanked them, but they were burly and strong. Han just buried his head and ran wildly, ignoring it. Wandering in the long river of time, being able to meet a pedestrian on the road is already as difficult as going to the sky, and trying to see the face of the other party is even more difficult than going to the sky. Lu Qin didn't dare to count the moment. There were countless vortexes in the river under his feet, and he would fall into it if he was not careful, especially when he encountered some truly enlightened people in the now, the river water touched the stone and swayed. Lu Qin didn't want to lie in a nest somewhere for hundreds of years in a dangerous scene. As for the occasional glimpses of the shore on the road, they are all vague picture fragments. After watching it, if you want to remember that Rao is as high as Lu Qin, you will be a little dizzy, because each picture symbolizes with an indescribable mystery. I don't know how long it took, but thanks to Lu Qin's preparations, every time he walked in the long river of time for 3,000 years, it was an experience, plus Lu Qin was pulled into the great world by the Buddha back then, so the years passed. Even if it is almost infinitely long, it is still not a difficult problem for Lu Qin. Otherwise, if you change it to the general 14 realms, I am afraid that you will be tortured by this kind of empty and nothing and no realm, and your Taoist heart will fall. Lu Qin finally stopped and let out a long breath. When he arrived, he was finally found by himself. A large pile of blue and purple talismans in the two large sleeves of the Taoist robe has been reduced to ashes. The scene in front of Lu Qin's eyes was as if he had come to a vast and boundless water surface, as flat as a mirror surface, with gravel under his feet, countless, colorful and splendid. The surface of the water is like a thin layer of colored glass, and the gravel, in fact, when you look closely, every sand is a star, just spread one after another. In the extreme distance where Lu Qin exhausted his eyesight, there was a long chain like an iron chain across the river, like a line spanning the sky and the earth. If you have to name it, you can probably call it cause and effect. But Lu Qin still hadn't found the ancient he wanted to talk to. The identity of the guardian, one of the priesthoods, is the late dead and the offender who guard the long river of time. However, even if he went back home now, it was a worthwhile trip, and he finally saw a large number of living creatures, including ancient ghosts and gods. There is a woman who can't see her face clearly, wearing a long cyan dress. Her robe is slowly swaying, and she has the beauty of the dress and belt of a painted lady. She was sitting on her knees, with a small table in front of her, and a few simple-style pottery drinking utensils on it. There is a suspended giant mountain that is constantly sinking, which is about higher than the 5 mountains of Middle-earth put together. But the truth may be shorter than a grain of dust in the vast world. On the top of the mountain, there was a man with no head on his neck holding his head. Above his head, his eyes were as many as holes in a beehive. After discovering Lu Qin, he blinked or closed his eyes, making a buzzing sound. A strange being who kept talking, writing with his fingers, and chanting the 2 words of the Buddha in his nasal voice, seemed not to like being interrupted, and exclaimed, "Noisy." After a while, this strange existence began to repeat the 2 words, "freedom." Occasionally, it will be slightly different, and the strange existence will cry and mutter to himself, not knowing cause and effect, not enough, far from enough. On a high snow-white platform that seems to have been tempered with countless pieces of snow, there are various altars for sacrifices. Probably someone who used ancient methods to entertain the gods and seek longevity. The next door of the high platform is an ancient wooden boat with a purple robe, painted with dragons floating on the bow. He sneered in ancient words, "The road is cut off, and you still want to lead the world, how can you be insignificant?" There is a man with extremely long eyebrows and extremely white skin. He looks like a real person from ancient times. It is probably rare to see guests here. His face gradually became clearer, and his appearance was handsome, but it was still difficult to hide the bleakness of his eyes. Sitting cross-legged near the long chain, with a halberd on his knees, perhaps it was too long since he had spoken seriously, his voice was as hoarse as a knife grindstone, and he asked with a smile, "Who is from when and where?" It's just that he quickly laughed at himself. You must not understand it. Starting from that incident, after all, it has been 8,000 years. Lu Chen couldn't understand the other party's words, but he figured it out. I know, it's a Qi trainer from a long time ago. This at least means that in the long future, there are still Qi practitioners who can come here, which is good. Just thinking about it again, it doesn't seem to be necessarily, what if the martial artist is pure enough? There was a woman with 2 eyebrows shaved. She raised the back of her hand slightly, looked, and then raised her head, looking at the Taoist priest who was a guest from afar. In addition, there is a group of existences, shadows, looming. According to Lu Chen's rough calculation, most of them are drawn by the road with the wild. That's right, the monks of the monster race are born with strong physical bodies, and they can reach the top of the mountain faster. They are not afraid of the sky and the earth. They always like to break all the old rules and new rules with their hands. An old-fashioned man with a high crown on his head, staggering and swaying, came to a dozen steps in front of Lu Chen's eyes, and asked in wild and elegant words, "Is Lu Fian dead?" Lu Chen smiled and replied, "If the senior is old friends with him, you can cry. If you have a grudge, you can let it go. You don't need to take any revenge, because Lu Fian has already been eaten by someone." The old man Gao Guan nodded and stared at the young Taoist priest. Lu Chen asked with a wild and elegant smile, "Dare to ask the senior's name?" The old man Gao Guan narrowed his eyes and said, "I don't have a Taoist name, I used a pseudonym to stamp my feet, let me think about it, I have to think about it carefully, I think about it, I haven't done anything major, just killing the savage martial artist, these guys, all eyes are higher than the top, except that you can't go to the ring and ask boxing, everything is good." The chicken Lu Chen, pecking at the rice, nodded vigorously. "I once asked an expert about boxing, what would happen if the opponent did not cooperate with the stiletto and handle?" "Senior, guess how the expert answered?" "The answer, it's very interesting. He said that if you have 100,000 kinds of boxing, you will be the king of 8 boxing when you enter the ring and divide your life and death." The old man Gao Guan nodded and said, "The masters have great views. It's a pity that I can't see them anymore." Lu Chen nodded vigorously and said, don't see it, I'm afraid that the senior will be killed by him with 2 or 3 punches." The old man Gao Guan stared at Lu Chen for a while. "I believe you, I have really seen that guy." Lu Chen took a step forward, and the old man stepped back all the way, and said with a smile, "A good Taoist priest, shouldn't you focus on what kind of swordsmanship you learn?" With one move, a wild monster at the peak of the Ascension realm was frightened away. Lu Chen stopped and said triumphantly, "I can't scare you old man to death." The old man hesitated for a while, but chose to continue to retreat, and finally his figure dissipated in a cloud of white mist. Lu Chen squatted down, stretched out his palm, and pressed his palm lightly on the surface of the glazed water. Looking down, I seemed to see a butterfly fluttering in the water. A pair of extremely pure golden eyes slowly opened, overlooking the young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. For this ancient high-ranking deity, even if the Taoist priest is thousands of years old, he is still young. No words, no voices, no ripples. Like a drum, like thunder, like a surging river. Lu Chen, you tried to cross the border 3,000 years ago, do you want to try again and violate the law again? Lu Chen's body swayed, so he had to retract his hand, sighed softly, raised his sleeves, shook out a futon, and fell onto the water. Lu Chen sat on the futon, with his hands on his stomach, silently, and began to concentrate, sitting and forgetting, his heart fasted. There was an ancient Taoist priest standing on the head of an ancient vicious beast, dragging close to it upstream. That little newbie Taoist priest, what are you doing here? Is it the perfect ascension realm or the 14th realm? Within the Taoist legal system, who do you call master? Hurry up and listen. Lu Chen turned a deaf ear. It doesn't matter who you are, the first Taoist priest in this world, and the dumb boy who liked to hang on the tail of the long queue, but they are all Taoist priests of seniority. Why don't you call your ancestors and grandpas? You take a huge advantage. After you go back, I guarantee that you can brag about it with anyone. Lu Chen just held his breath, and with every breath, the true qi condensed between his nostrils, like two white snakes hanging down, and the Taoist priest's heel was the same scene. Xiao Nyobi, I can't see it, you are really good, but I don't know if you have been here for a long time, and you can still show off like this. I can't say that it is not as good as those poor worms, let alone swallowing infuriating, facial features and internal organs are all to be flattened. Little Taoist priest, talk to your grandfather and see. There are many qi practitioners who are not as high or low as yours in the world today. Are there any number of hands in the world? It doesn't matter if you don't say anything. You just need to tell me, was that dumb little Taoist priest who saw that everyone was virtuous, and was someone beaten up to find his teeth? Hearing this, Lu Chen finally opened his eyes and touched his nose. He is the master of Xiao Dao, senior. You wait, Xiao Dao will invite the master to come over and reminisce with the senior. Forget it, I don't have much hatred with him. We had a normal relationship back then. After that, the ancient Taoist priest really stopped talking. That strange being who seemed to have cultivated the outsider's Yehu Chan, in fact, had been listening carefully to the conversation between Lu Chen and the Taoist priest, and when he learned that the young Taoist priest was indeed a Taoist priest, he was suddenly disappointed and burst into tears. The woman who likes to raise her hands like a white jade bow waved to Lu Chen and smiled sweetly. Master, is there a new master in Qingqiu now? Lu Chen slapped his head and said, returning to the senior's words, now that there is no Qingqiu in the world, how can you talk about the master? The woman's expression was complicated in an instant, and she seemed to be both shy and smiling. The so-called foxes in later generations, on her side, would be ashamed of themselves. You came here neither out of bounds nor back, what do you want to do? To prevent anyone from coming here, have a game with my senior brother. Do easy. If you exchange 114 realm for 114 realm. Of course, Lu Chen's senior brother lost even more. Definitely can't do this kind of loss-making business. This said, Lu Chen, you have your reasons, and I have my responsibilities. You can't stay here for a long time and go back. Lu Chen said aggrieved, my brother didn't come here often before, why don't you chase people away? This said, it's different, Ko's name Yufeng is almost divine, and it is already a supernatural power. Lu Chen's eyes mournfully said, the poor man asks the heart to interpret dreams, it's almost magical. This said, Tao Fa and supernatural power are different after all. Lu Chen asked, can't you open one eye and close the other? This said, what do you say? Lu Chen just fell backwards, and quickly reached out his hand against the surface of the water, so he didn't fall to the ground. The god said, They can't leave, they must stay here. Why do you Lu Qin spend your life here in vain? Lu Qin jumped up and got up. The futon was burned by the thunder and lightning of several thin threads, and finally it was like water flowing. Another stagger. After that, Lu Chen's feet seemed to be muddy, and every time Lu Chen moved, he would bring out mud as heavy as mountains. In an instant, Lu Chen's figure rose from the ground, and his figure floated horizontally. When he landed, he seemed to slap his feet, and his knee joints creaked. In fact, this is why Lu Chen had been at the Yunlu Inn before, why he would fall backwards while sitting on the railing. And why did he slap his feet when he was at the Dragon Elephant Sword sect? Lu Chen raised his hand, put his fingers together, pulled gently, and said angrily, "If you are so aggressive, Xiao Dao will use his real skills." As if twisting a curtain with 2 fingers, Lu Chen lifted a corner. In an instant, between the heaven and the earth, which was originally bright as the day, there were countless lights that were as dark as ink, penetrating into this world like a tide. The gods shouted, "Stop!" Lu Chen hurriedly stretched out his hand and knocked the pitch black back into the curtain, then he seemed to let go of his fingers and lowered the curtain again. Lu Chen said angrily, "It's Xiaodao's gaffe." A laughter sounded, like the echo of the valley, but also like the rolling of thunder. Although it is a dog jumping over the wall, it does have a bit of Taoism, and it is worthy of being a direct disciple of Taoist ancestors. Lu Chen put his hands on his hips and put on a scolding posture. "Sneaky, what are you talking about? You can dance if you have the ability." As for the identity of the other party, Lu Chen was very clear. It is under the jurisdiction of the ancient Heavenly Court Thunder Department, and now the is still there. Dili Jingqing, the guy who worked as a driver for Nanzong, used to be in charge of Zhangkan Division. This is half the boss of the old coachman. But it is still not one of the 12 high-ranking gods. He asked, "Will Ma Kuxuan die?" Lu Qin said angrily, "It was said back then that he would let go of a horse, and Pindao has already saved him once, otherwise he would have been beaten to death by Chen Pingon long ago, so what about Pindao?" The gods remained silent and retreated to the divine position. Lu Qin breathed a sigh of relief. The conscience of heaven and earth is only a few moments of impoverishment. Although this deity has always hoped that Ma Kuxuan can enlighten and then embark on a divine way. However, the dojo of the old thunder gods in the world is not the Jinwu mountain where Ma Kuxuan practiced. Jinwu Mountain, one of the ancestral families of the Aquarius continent, is actually one of the dojos of another god. If this really started to ask questions, Lu Chen would have to make a slap in the face before speaking properly, and he had to be polite. After all, whether it's senior master headmaster or senior brother Yu, they are extremely respectful to this virtuous deity. Because in the ancient times about 6,000 years ago, a group of majestic existences with new god names appeared. The god named Dejia, who traveled around Sui Mountain in Middle-earth, as well as those land-based real people with their own mountain governance, all appeared at about the same time. And the patriarchs of the 3 sects all recognized these divine names. For example, one of the gods is called Jinwu. In the Qingming world, the Baiyujing, the heavenly transformation heavenly demon, in addition to being afraid of the Taoist ancestor, is also afraid of this true martial arts god. There is another osmanthus tree on the moon, which blooms in spring, and the osmanthus is reigning in the sky. This goddess can be regarded as a female who fills a part of the vacancy, and her name is Guanghan. It's just that she was always reluctant to return to that dojo. Lu Qin stretched out his hand to his ear and waited for a long time without hearing anything, then retracted his hand and said tentatively, "Each one step back." Still silent, Lu Qin felt relieved, and this was the promise. Lu Chen's figure dissipated, stopped in one place, and reappeared. He no longer saw the lively scene before, and there was a vast white fog. The Taoist priest wearing the lotus crown is all alone, only the dead in the heaven and the earth can't give up day and night. Lu Chen's expression was unprecedentedly solemn, without the slightest bit of normal air. Then the poor road is here, waiting for the white Emperor Qing to be in the middle. In Huaihuang County, an old house that has never been sold to outsiders. Dong Shuijing opened the door and said with a smile, "Yo, isn't this Lin Yupu? It's an honor to come here." Lin Shui stepped over the threshold and stretched out his hand. "Don't talk nonsense, hurry up." Dong Shuijing wondered, why? Lin Shui said, "Congratulations." Dong Shuijing was amused, "You are learning from Wei Shanjun." Lin Shui said, "I borrowed some Guyu money from Chen Pingan, and I have to return it to him sooner." Dong Shuijing smiled and said, "Scare me, I thought you were going to get married." Lin Shui raised his foot and gestured to kick someone, but Dong Shuijing turned sideways and said with a smile, "A scholar speaks and does not do anything. If you use the words of Qin Shanju, the two chickens out of the cage peck each other." Lin Shui said, "Old rules, sloppy." Dong Shuijing went to the kitchen to make a fire and served 2 bowls of wontons. When Dong Shuijing was busy, Lin Shui, who was sitting at the table of the 8 immortals in the main room, turned his head and stared blankly at the willow tree in the courtyard. As for the well beside the tree, Lin Yupu didn't even see it. By the time Dong Shuijing brought a big bowl of steaming wontons in one hand, Lin Shui had already withdrawn his sight. Lin Shui took the bowl and chopsticks and asked, "Do you know what Chen Pingan called us to come over this time?" Dong Shuijing shook his head and said, "I didn't ask." As soon as Lin Shui ate the wontons, he began to pick and choose. Dong Shuijing didn't even bother to listen, so he lowered his head to eat. "When I was in the school, I didn't like this guy, not because Lin Shui was a child of a rich family, but he liked to put on a bad face every day." Afterwards, Dong Shuijing was even more displeased with Lin Shui. "She is the same age as the two of them, and she is Li Huai's sister. That wicker-like slender woman, and she is still so gentle." Dong Shuijing asked, "How much do you owe Chen Pingan?" Lin Shui said, 100. Dong Shuijing nodded and said, "I'll give you a cushion first." Lin Shui said, "Guyu Qian." Dong Shuijing pretended to be surprised, "I thought it was Xiaoxua Qian." Lin Shui scolded the rich man. Dong Shuijing said, "You have such a good relationship with Chen Pingan, why are you willing to owe me a favor?" Lin Shui said, "The Dadu is excavated in Tonggishao, and there are places where money is needed." Dong Shuijing said, "I don't have a place to spend money." Lin Shui pouted, "You, Dong Banqing, only have a place to make money. I have to admit that this guy Dong Shuijing is really a good material for earning money." Lin Shui admired him just by talking about one of the businesses. He packaged up several immortal hilltops with good spiritual energy, especially with clear water veins, and fiddled with some potted plants, specially pitting the silver of the generals, ministers, and dignitaries under the mountains. The euphemism is to save money for the children and grandchildren. If there are 1 or 2 potted plants, the Shantao Xianfu will carefully record the files, and according to the requirements of each customer, make an appointment in advance, and the descendants must be taken home in a certain year. Of course, they can also be on the spot. Converting it into fairy money, taking things in advance or changing money is not acceptable. Unless the real family is in trouble, and they are too poor to open the pot, as long as the children of the family go up the mountain, they can exchange for a slightly discounted immortal money. The fairy mansion that cultivates bonsai can even help keep a family tree. Anyway, that's the thing. No matter how big or small, everything is covered. Lin Shui heard that there were indeed a large number of dignitaries and gentry from various countries. He was tempted, and they all paid for it. The countries under the mountain followed countless trends at once. For this purpose, Lin Shui had to admire Dong Shuijing's business experience. This is just one of many business lines for Dong Shuijing. Dong Shuijing scolded for no reason, useless. Lin Shou glared at him and said, "A trash worse than me." The chicks started pecking at each other again. There are clouds above the layers of clouds, and at the bottom of the clouds is the human world. Ma Yuan drank wine, and his poetry flourished, but he had to prepare a preface first. Unlike many scholars, Ma Yuan likes to recite and excerpt the prefaces of various poems and songs by himself. Xiao Yao, the servant of the Ministry of Punishment, took a ferry belonging to the military of Dali. This time, Xiao Yao returned to his hometown with Ma Yuan, his immediate superior, and Guan Iran, a member of the Ministry of Housing and Qing officials. Xiao Yao was called by that little uncle, and Guan Iran was a fake public servant who came here to see his friends, by the way, the lord of Luopao Mountain, Chen Shanju, and Jing Quan, who had been the prefect of Baoshi County for a few days. Are the kind of good friends who can even vomit when drinking plain wine in Changpu River. The ferry boat bypasses the Baiyue Mountain far away, which means that it is close to Nujiadu. Ma Yuan stood leaning on the railing at the outdoor viewing platform, and tapped the railing lightly. Seeing this beautiful scenery, he was moved and began to recite poems. Xiao Yao and Guan Iran were sitting in the house drinking, and Guan Iran turned around and said with a smile, "Uncle Ma, you are writing again. Do you want me to help you compile your thousands of limericks into a book, and then find a bookstore to spend the money on? The money is printed. No worries about sales, there are so many yamen in the capital, as long as it is an official, below the 2nd rank, above the 9th rank, and one handbook, my capital will be recovered. This deal is done. If you add more with the capital, you can make a lot of money." The interrupted Master Shang Shu didn't turn his head, just raised a finger. Xiao Yao smiled and said, "If Lord Shang Shu really wants to publish a book of poems, even if he doesn't follow official relations, he just uses a pseudonym, and he doesn't have to worry about selling it at all." Guan Iran teased, "Zhao Shilang, how can you be an official? Don't do this kind of flattery sooner, our Uncle Ma is going to Sunfall Ferry soon, will you burn a cold stove?" Xiao Yao asked directly, "Isn't it in the wild world, still holding the title of Shangshu? Will you step down?" Guan Iran raised his chin, "This kind of thing, only the high officials who are qualified to participate in the small court meeting in the Imperial Study Room know about it, you ask the right master." Ma Yuan walked back to the house and said, "You don't need to step down. Anyway, we have you as a servant in the Ministry of Punishment, and you won't be able to make mistakes. Besides, in the 6 yamen, the high position can't be completely stationary, but it can't be too frequent." Guan Iran laughed and said, "For Zhao Shilang, this is not good news. We have to drink wine to drown one's worries. Come, Zhao Shilang, let's go." Xiao Yao was a little helpless. The contemporary head of the Ma family in Shangzhou Kingdom, not long ago, was actually the minister of the household, and was transferred to the Ministry of Punishment as the chief official, neither promotion or demotion. From the original left servant of the Ministry of Punishment, Mu Yan, was promoted to the Minister of Household Affairs, replacing Ma Yuan, and became the minister of a country. The bureaus of the Ministry of Punishment, as well as the cultivators who are named in the Ministry of Punishment, are naturally happy to see it. Regarding that war, which of the 6 chief officials of the Dali court was more responsible, it was only Xin Xin or Ma Yuan, and it had nothing to do with Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights. Also with the surname of Shangs Huguo, Chao Ping and Yan Zhao, have already gone to the Sunfall Ferry in the wild world to join Song Changjing and the feudal king Song Mu. And the owner of the Ma family in Poyang is a bloated man with a face full of flesh. As long as Ma Yuan does not wear official uniforms and steps on his boots, he looks like a rich family in a small county at most. No more, the county government the richest man is unlikely to be Ma Yuan's virtue. But people don't look good. Although Ma Yuan was born with a big and round shoulders, he might be able to scare those timid people walking on the streets of Beijing alone at night. Women are afraid of robbery, and men are afraid of robbery. Yes, but this Ma Xiangshu, who has been in charge of Dallas Money Bag for many years, is a very famous and talented man. He has a hairpin and small script, and his writing is very consummate. He is the old man of the Zhao family who is the patriarch of the pavilion of the Dali dynasty. It is said that Ma Yuan's small script is exactly the opposite of his appearance. It means that as ugly as Ma Yuan's people are, the characters are as beautiful as they are. And Ma Yuan, as a great minister who is recognized as one of the arms of the national teacher Cui Yu, is indeed a very vulgar official. It is also one of the two fastest promotions in Dallas officialdom in recent decades. Ma Yuan in the capital in the north, and Lu Qingfeng in the capital in the south. As for why Guaniran was able to speak so freely on Ma Yuan's side, it was because Ma Yuan's imperial examination teacher was Guaniran's great-grandfather. The ironclad old minister of the Ministry of Officials, the servant Lang and the middle class of the flowing water. In addition, before Ma Yuan became a high-ranking official of the third rank, every 3 years, Ma Yuan had a major plan to inspect the capital. No matter whether Ma Yuan was an official in Beijing or a local government, he always made a grade A comment without any suspense. This made Ma Yuan, who was born in the Ma family in Poyang, Shangzhou Kingdom, to move 7 times in 3 years in the government office at the beginning. This gave Ma Yuan a coveted official nickname, Vest. Therefore, Ma Yuan, who likes to scold people the most, is the only one who doesn't scold Guaniran. Of course, apart from such a relationship, Guaniran's accounting, especially his ability to check accounts, is really not bad. In the dark night, the eastern boundary of Aquarius continent has left the Qinghuan kingdom, which is a vassal of Dali. Li Bao, who has been the Minister of Rights for many years, treats the guests in person today. Lu Min. This young Qi practitioner is a native of Qinghuan country. Li Bao has the appearance of a bookish old man. After he closed his study, he became Li Baozhen, the weaving officer of the Dali dynasty. In the early years, when Li Baozhen was serving as a spy, the leader of Dali Lubading, he changed his official status in Qinghuan Kingdom. He was promoted quickly, and soon became the Minister of Rights. He has presided over many conferences, and is a well-deserved person in the palm of a country. In addition, Li Baozhen was still in the Qinghuan Kingdom. Several of the grand emperors behind the scenes of the vassal states of Dali in the past, the immortal houses on the mountain, and the sects of the rivers and lakes under the mountain were all under Li Baozhen's control. Lu Min didn't want to see Li Baozhen at first, but one of his secret mansion was stolen. There are 2 bowls on the table, 1 bowl of ink and 1 bowl of water. In this study, there are not any sage books, they are all miscellaneous books that are useless for the imperial examinations, and useless for the people's hearts. Li Baozhen poured himself a glass of wine, took the lead and sat down, stretched out his hand and pressed it twice, signaling the guests to be polite. Lu Min hesitated for a moment and sat on the opposite chair. Playing against chairs is like a game of chess. Li Baozhen asked with a smile, "Where's Wang Yifu? Have you met each other over the years?" Lu Min was silent. At that time, Lu Min's own master and later Dali accompanied Lu Qingfeng, Minister of Rights of the capital, and served as a parental official in a small county in his hometown of Qinghuan. Wang Yifu was the county captain at the time. Later, when Lu Qingfeng changed places, he went to a bird house. The small border county of served as the prefect, and Wang Yifu followed along and served as a coachman all the way. As Lu Qingfeng's book boy, or half a student, Lu Min had a good relationship with the outspoken Wei Wang Xian at that time, because the other party often accompanies Lu Qingfeng to drink together. It seems that as long as Lieutenant Wang speaks, he can make his master, who is always frowning slightly alone, think a few more words. I remember one time drinking, Wang Yifu once asked his master a question, wanting to know how he viewed the mountains. Because Lu Min drank alcohol at the time, he couldn't remember too much, but one of the truths of the question and answer between his master and Wang Xianwei has made Lu Min deeply remembered to this day. From my master's point of view, the so-called immortals on the mountain are just ordinary masters with bigger fists, that's all, there are few exceptions. At that time, Lu Qingfeng still had a question, which was asked of Lu Min. Of course, it was more likely to be a kind of self-talk and self-questioning by a master, which was related to whether he obeyed the rules, including those who set the rules. Li Baozhen pointed to a booklet on the table and said with a smile, "Lu Min, you are a very cautious person, so I'm even more surprised. What do you think? I don't keep this kind of thing in your mind, dare to write it down on paper." On the top of the booklet was an interlocking plan, aimed at a big man who could kill Lu Min with just one finger. The two sides are about the same age, but the realm is too different. Lu Min still did not speak. Li Baozhen asked, "Is it still from Lu Shangsha's idea? You just help me write it down." Lu Min finally said, "If it's my master's idea, if you get the booklet, it must be counted." Li Baozhen nodded, "Probably so. I remember watching a snack of Lu Lao Shangshu back then. There was a sect on the mountain with a guilty conscience, and he was about to reveal a scandal. He asked Lu Qingfeng to help, and Lu Qingfeng helped to fabricate a similar scandal. There was a lot of uproar, and the Shanshui Dibao was talking about this. Of course, the result could only prove the innocence of that sect, and then there was another gossip that slandered this sect, and the cultivator began to work hard to prove his innocence. After that, and when the real scandal is reported, they will not take it seriously, and will not want to get to the bottom of it." Li Baozhen found Lu Qingfeng, and the latter just said it lightly. Of course, in return, the sect with little wealth, smashing pots and selling iron, secretly took the initiative to send a large sum of immortal money to the Luojing household department. Li Baozhen still doesn't know whether the real victim of that scandal was too late to expose a small sect of the enemy's family, whether he had obtained the kind of justice that they were satisfied with, or that they truly recognized in their hearts. As for the booklet on the table, Lu Min recorded the entry point of the plan in it, which was regarded as the first move against Qin Pingan. It is Ruan Xiao of Longquan's sword sect. In this way, the sudden fortunes of Qin Pingan and Luo Pashan are more reasonable, especially benevolent. The two parties have already made a private agreement for life. Then two small sects with Shanshui Dibao to promote this matter were tragically wiped out and died under the sword qi. Of course, no one would believe that this was Luo Pashan's method. But this is the first link, a small foreshadowing. However, some people who are interested, may at this stage, they will start to guess whether it is Xingyang Mountain slander and blame. And Luan Qiong of Longquan Jianzong, the chief worshipper of the Dali dynasty, knew that this incident was false, and the content of these Shanshui Di newspapers was even more false, but the relationship with Luo Pao Mountain. The second link is Shujian Lake, which is related to Gu Kan. It can be mutually corroborated with a certain landscape travel journal. Li Baozhen turned his head to look at the two bowls of water on the table, smiled and said, "Gu Kan is the bowl of ink, no matter how you mix it, it's all ink, but Qin Pingan is the bowl of water, dipped in a little ink, it starts to turn from clear to turbid." Already. Lu Min nodded, not denying Li Baozhen's point of view. "Lu Min, do you have a grudge against Qin Pingan?" "No. The first time we met, did you find him unpleasant?" "When we first met, I felt that he and my master were ordinary scholars. They were gentle, approachable, able to cultivate themselves, teach others, and do things better. The first time we met was on the road outside the Lion Forest in Qingwan country. In order to make way for a small black charcoal on the road, the ox cart rushed into the pond, and they became chickens. But that Qin Pingan's performance at that time made Lu Min feel good. Just like what my master said, no matter what kind of family it is, whether it is a wealthy family or a small family, as long as the child makes a mistake, the adult cannot replace the apology. Wrong. That's because I think he is very lucky. He became famous at a young age, made great achievements in other places, made a name for himself, and became a disciple of the Confucian temple saint. The Taoist is still the first person in the colorful world. It's all for him. Makes you jealous and thinks the way of heaven is unfair. You want to fight for your master, Lu Lao Shangshu. I'm not jealous. I have carefully studied his family history. I must admit that all the benefits are what Chen Pingon deserves. In the officialdom of Dali, there are two people who are promoted the fastest, namely, Ma Yuan, the chief minister of Dali, and Lu Qingfeng, the minister of ceremonies in the capital. The most interesting thing is that the whole official circle knows that Lu Qingfeng was used by His Majesty the Emperor to monitor Luo Wang Songmu, but the vassal king Songmu always treated each other with courtesy. The reason why Luo Jing, the companion capital, never became Songmu's yamen alone, was that there was Lu Qingfeng. The book boy Lu Min and the squire Wang Yifu are the two people who have followed Lu Qingfeng for the longest time. Especially Lu Min, who has been by the master's side since he was young. But Lu Qingfeng was already dead because he was not a cultivator. The old man didn't even think about becoming a deity. But Lu Min would not hate a scholar recognized by his master because of this. Before his death, Lu Qingfeng once joked with Lu Min that the only person who can improve the policies of the national teacher Cui Yu in the future is not in conspiracy, not in trivial deeds that are visible on the surface, but in honesty, in morality, and in people's hearts. Lu Min smiled and said, "Come on. I have always kept silent about the name Chen Pingon. You, Li Baozhen, don't believe in evil." Li Baozhen calmed himself, looked out the door, his face was ashen, and asked, "Who?" Wearing a green shirt and saying goodbye to the hosta, as if entering a realm of no one, stepping into the study, "It's really unfortunate, Lu Shangshu is gone, and I'm still here. If you want to kill Lu Min, it will never be your turn." This man was followed by a young squire with a yellow hat and blue shoes and a green bamboo stick. Li Baozhen asked, "How could it be you?" "Coincidentally." Chen Pingon stood behind the chair, stretched out his hand to hold Lu Min's head firmly, twisted it gently, and said with a smile, "If you don't learn well, you will really die if you are careful." Li Baozhen wanted to speak with his heart, wanted to call out the name of his eldest brother, but found that he could only be silent, let alone speak. Then Li Baozhen was horrified to discover that Chen Pingon, who was here at this time, actually had a pair of pure golden eyes. A lonely city among colorful clouds. In the White Emperor City, this place where the true and false are confused, there are countless flying swords, the movement is disordered, and the speed is uncertain. It was Xing Juzhong who spent 3,000 years to spend money to buy, accept offerings, collect secret realms, or copy the originals. Xing Juzhong made and imitated them by himself. Centering comes from the fantasy, through years of deduction and calculus. Xing Juzhong, who looked up at a celestial and star map, withdrew his gaze. "This road probably won't work." The other Xing Juzhong shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. Exhausting the mind of human beings can only be like this. Is it possible to ask others for help? The question is, who can I turn to? There is no Cui Yu in the world. Wait and see. For example, play that game of chess with the headmaster Bai Yujing Ko first. The name of Bai Yujing is a pirate, and the Taoism is as high as a dragon. I have dragon-slaying skills, please see the sword." Apart from Xing Juzhong, the only cultivators in Beidasheng who have visited this secret realm in history seem to be only the pioneering disciple Fu Su and the closing disciple Gu Kan. The sword repairer, Fu Su, once sat here for more than a month without getting anything. Gu Ken was even more hopeless than his senior brother Fu Shu, so he just asked his master some very layman questions. Jianxiu has a flying sword. If there is no teacher and family learning, he is ignorant. Do you need to find it by yourself? The natal supernatural power of Fei Jin. Of course it is necessary, but the difference between the difficulty and the easy is huge. The sword cultivator searches for and investigates the magical powers of flying swords, such as diving into the water to find fish. It is somewhat obscure, and the water is deep, so you need to patiently. Some are simple, but you can see it. You don't have to work hard. As for the depth of the water and the shallowness of the water, it has nothing to do with the rank of Fei Jin. It's all luck. Many Fijian supernatural powers are clearly like a dragon swimming in the shallows. Sword repair is easy, and you can pull the dragon's beard. Go ashore and become one's own possessions. Some natal supernatural powers are like a small fish swimming on the bottom of the sea. Jianxiu spends a lot of effort to find them, but he still gains very little. He can only laugh at himself. The great monks who are famous in one continent are actually sword cultivators with hidden identities, but they are embarrassed to admit that they are sword cultivators. So I was ashamed to open my mouth and dared not to call myself a sword cultivator. To say that there are almost no Shanzai cultivators in the world, the reason is that the sects on the mountain are looking for sword cultivators outside, and they spare no effort. Carefully sculpted and cultivated at the expense of financial resources, and the birth of a flying sword of life, there are traces to follow: the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Beiju Luzhou, the ancient Shu boundary of Aquarius Island, and several other feng shui in Haran Treasure Land. The possibility of sword cultivators appearing is far more than other places. Having two or more natal flying swords, or a flying sword with several natal supernatural powers, does it have an innate advantage? For Jianxiu himself, of course, this is the case. Between Fei Jin and Fei Jin, as well as between the natal supernatural powers that retreat, the explanation of the two is similar, or the complementary of the two is opposite. There are different degrees of gain. But if you put it in all sword repairs in history, it is not necessarily true. For example, your master has only one flying sword of destiny, but all flying swords related to the water method can be repaired by thousands of swords. The flying swords are stacked on top of each other, and the one facing them is still like a group of ministers seeing the monarch, so they can only bow their heads. Is it a question from a university about the name of each flying sword? I heard that the name of the flying sword is Takeo Yamashita's boxing move. It should not be rumored or leaked. Excluding that kind of sword cultivator's name, or the blind man touching the elephant, a flying sword, if the name is too big, is an empty shelf that is not worthy of the name, and the name and the reality will clash, and then affect the flying sword's life and supernatural powers. If you are young, you will lose everything, because it means that the confused sword cultivator has not yet figured out the true connection between the flying sword and the supernatural power of life. Disciple only has one last question. The origin of Fei Jin can only depend on life. It's all destiny beyond fate. You said that Jianxiu can only rely on fate. It's not wrong, but it's not enough. Between the colorful clouds stands a large scorpion, and the stone table below it is carved with a chessboard, and there are 2 tins of chess pieces on it. There was an old man in a blue shirt, with his hands behind his head. The phrase, "blessing the world first," is well known in the world. Han Qiao's heartfelt voice sounded, "Senior brother, master has come to Baidi City." Xing Juzhong said, "Let him wait a moment, it'll go over immediately." If you just learn swordsmanship, for Xing Juzhong, it can't be said that there is no benefit at all, but it is of little significance. Because Xing Juzhong has already tried it. Therefore, Xing Juzhong completely abandoned this path. A young god who was pure sword cultivation in the Ascension realm was in the body and outer body. Facts have proved that even if it is a pure sword cultivator of the 14th realm, there is still a long way to go from the avenue that Xing Ju thought in the center. Then there is a sword outside the sword, and the technique seeks the Tao. The road that Bai Yi took back then was not bad. The two Jingzhuzhong merged into one, looked at the flying swords, and said to themselves, it's like a person's surname, first name, character, number. In fact, there are quite a lot of future sword cultivators who have come to this secret realm, but Jingzhuzhong watched there raising the Fei Jian from the sidelines, and the harvest was still very small. After all, it is not a world where the avenues are completely circulated. As for Fu Su and Gu Kan among the disciples, it was only luck that Jingzhuzhong did not erase their memories. Under the big screen, next to the stone table. After Chen Qinglu lost one hand, he played the score by himself on the chessboard. Jingzhuzhong appeared and said, Master. Don't dare. Chen Qinglu didn't lift his head, I'm afraid of losing my life. Han Xiaoso was used to this. In those days, the master and his brother were together less often, but as long as they met each other, it was always the same situation. After 3,000 years of separation, the master and apprentice finally reunited, but the result is still so unsurprising. Han Ko's didn't know the origin of the master and the blind Taoist priest in Beia Pingzu. As for what the driver of Beiju Luzhou was in vain, and the scholar Chen Zhuliu, he didn't even know. Master's roots are not in Haoranzhuzhou, but from a blessed land in Lixiaozu. Han Ko's first saw Master when she was a young girl. At that time, Master was accompanied by a maid with a short spear named Xia Shiji. Han Qiao's first impression when she saw the burly woman back then was that she was really tall and had a big physique. But for some reason, Xia Shiji always considered herself a maid, but her master called her a senior sister. Later, the master accepted Lu Daokun's troublemaker as a young disciple, and Xia Shiji took great care of Lu Daochun and gave him a pink Taoist robe and a glazed pavilion. Han Ko's couldn't understand this at the time. Why did that woman surnamed Xia add to Lu Daokun's blue eyes? Later, I asked my senior brother Jingzhuzhong to know the answer. It turned out to be, a fool looks at a fool and is extra kind. But Han Xiaosi had doubts again, because she could feel that senior brother Jing was actually very close to Xia Shiji, even closer than Master Chen Qinglu. Jingzhuzhong said that Lu Daochun is a half-smart person who likes to pretend to be stupid, and belongs to a real fool. Xia Shiji is not stupid but willing to be stupid, so he is really smart. Chen Qinglu threw the chess piece in his palm on the chessboard, looked up and asked, Do you know why I refuse to teach you swordsmanship? Master is willing to say a few more words is the best. The implication of Jingzhuzhong's words is naturally that he, a disciple, already knows the answer, but Master, you can find something if you don't have anything to say. As a disciple, just listen patiently. To say that this eldest disciple has done something wrong or not, there really isn't anything wrong. On the contrary, it is only said that on the side of Taishishin, Gua Outing, who was beating and trying to breach the contract, was Jingzhuzhong to climb the mountain instead of his master. A city of white emperor, standing in the divine continent of Middle-earth, the city owner Jingzhuzhong, recognized as the #1 giant in the world of demons. In the past, except for the vast world, the Qingming world and the wild world may not recognize it, but now they have to pinch their noses to recognize this fact. Beta Shengzheng is in the middle, really, unreasonably strong. Even the old scholar, when Gong Delin was drinking with Chen Qinglu, had to say something about our brother's ability to accept apprentices. There is really nothing to say. But to say that Jingzhuzhong, the first disciple of the mountain, is so good, and he is liked by Master, I am sorry, but Chen Qinglu really can't like it. Damn, this guy is so smart. I remember that when Jingzhuzhong had just started practicing, he fell in love with chess. Chen Qinglu felt that this was a bit out of business. A cheap practitioner in the lower 5 realms has such spare time. How can you reassure your master to teach you swordsmanship? He just played a game with this great disciple, guessing chess pieces, black and white. As a result, 36 times in a row, they all correctly guessed the color of the pieces. The young man didn't even look at the hand where the master was hiding the chess piece. From beginning to end, he just stared at Chen Qingli's eyes. Chen Qinglu seemed calm at the time, looking at the pale and colorless disciple across the table, but his eyes were shining brightly. Chen Qinglu began to murmur in his heart that he, the master, was picking up treasures by taking shit. Or did you go out without looking through the almanac and encounter a monster? Among those savage old beasts who just woke up, who do you think is the most likely to join the 14th realm? Well, Xiaomo on Luopa Mountain, except for Bai Jing, who has turned into a little girl, is pretty good. Although they are not human, they are human. Unlike some people in certain places, they are obviously human, but they are too immortal. Even the dojos are not on the ground. Right in the middle. Chen Qinglu sat down on the stone bench, looked at the two direct disciples standing, and said with a smile, "Pretty, don't be stunned, sit down and talk." In fact, there were only 2 stone benches beside the table. Han Qiao glanced at senior brother. Xing Juzhong smiled and nodded. She dared to take a seat. It's easy to say elsewhere, Han Qiao say is not so restrained. After all, when you sit here, you usually have to play chess with your senior brother. But Xing Juzhong didn't care about the harsh words of his master, and said, "The pseudonym is Wang Youwu, and the Taoist name is Shanjun. Its real body is not the Shanjun we think the world thinks." While speaking, between the master and the apprentice, on the side of the chess table, there appeared an elderly Taoist priest wearing a bamboo crown, carrying a sword and riding a deer. Chen Qinglu frowned and said, "Isn't that Bai Jing?" Xing Juzhong said, "She ranks 3rd. Pure swordsmanship, it's more difficult to get along, even if the path under your feet is in the right direction. It seems that there is only a line of separation, but it is still quite far." This ancient demon clan who stole the title of Shanjun, the opportunity to meet the road lies in the phrase tyranny is stronger than tiger in later generations. Therefore, 10,000 years later, in the wild world, the more tyrannical the road is, the higher its Taoism will be. You can sit back and enjoy it. It was able to take the lead because of the arrangement of the ancestor of Tuyua Mountain and Zhou, who drove half of the world to the Great Wall of Sword Qi to pave the way for it to join the road. I believe that Wang Youwu had already woken up at that time. After that, it's just pretending to be asleep. I guess it's only half a step away. Wang Youwu, who has stepped in with 1 foot and stepped on the threshold with half of his foot, can enter the 14th realm, but it is hidden deeper. So wait until the battle was tragic, and within a few years, Wang Youwu will be able to become the 14th realm. Hearing that there will be an additional 14th realm cultivator in the world, Chen Qinglu was completely indifferent, but just glanced at the sky. Among the 14 realm cultivators, how could there be no distinction between superior and inferior? Maybe Xing Juzhong was the only cultivator who dared to call Shoumi by his first name in the human world. As for the remaining small group of great cultivators, it doesn't mean that they are not as strong as Xing Juzhong, but they are not suitable because of their status. In short, they each have their own concerns. Chen Qinglu asked, "The second one is that anonymous person who deliberately avoided Bai Zai?" Xing Juzhong shook his head and said, "It's the one with the pseudonym Ligo. The appearance of a boy with heavy pupils has been shown in the sky before." Chen Qinglu frowned and said, "Isn't the road to the joint path of refining things already taken first by others? There is a wuzhou called Taiyin in the Qingming world, and it is 1 step ahead. It stands to reason that every road of the great cultivator that joins the 14 realms is a single plank bridge. Just like Jinshou Xiaomo's success has fallen short, it is because Zuandugwan Sun Daoist is already on the road." Xing Juzhong explained, "Ligo once chose 2 paths at the same time, one is to refine things, the other is to eat books. The Tao manifested as a silverfish and created a book city, trying to do the opposite. Wang. After Zhou Mi ascended to the sky, it means that he deliberately gave up a single plank bridge that was almost ascending to the sky to Li Guo. Therefore, Li Guo relied on this to join the road. It was not a big accident, and it was almost a conclusion. Han Qiaoxi's eyelids trembled. Chen Qinglu was still calm. Do you think him against Li Zhou? Xing Zhuzhong said, he didn't dare to kill him at all, so when he met Master, he would only avoid his edge. Chen Qinglu laughed. Han Qiao couldn't help laughing, and she was no longer so nervous. Chen Qinglu smiled and said, then I, the master, can't thank you, this apprentice. Xing Zhuzhong said, I have to thank master for not temporarily changing the color of the pieces in his hand. Chen Qinglu was silent for a moment, then said, I actually wanted to fool you when I was on the 18th pawn. It was that stupid big man who blocked it twice with his heart. Xing Zhuzhong said, I recognize the process, and I also recognize the result, so I have always been grateful to master and her. If there is a 37th guess, Xing Zhuzhong can still guess correctly, but it is very likely that it will hurt the foundation of the Tao. That's why Chen Qinglu said today that Xie Shiji had blocked him twice. Xing Zhuzhong continued, Wang Youwu, Li Zhou, and then there is a certain possibility of Bai Jing and that anonymous. But besides them, there is actually a concubine Fei, who will walk before Bai Jing when the opportunity is right. On the surface, the concubine's ability to join the road is due to Bai Ze's guidance, but in fact, it can still be regarded as an old road that has been carefully laid out. Chen Qinglu said with a smile, if Zhou Mi is as powerful as you said, why would he go to the sky and run away in despair, and can only wait for the patriarch of the three sects to join the road, and then go and ask him a question? Xing Zhuzhong said, when Hai Zhou Mi was only one person after all. Chen Qinglu asked, what if Zhou Mi was with you and Xiuhu? Xing Zhuzhong smiled and said, it's best not to make assumptions about human affairs, and don't talk about what if. Chen Qinglu clicked his tongue and said, Master is teaching the disciples. Xing Zhuzhong rested one hand on the stone table and said with a smile, Master. Chen Qinglu waited for the next sentence, but Xing Zhuzhong did not continue to speak. Chen Qinglu laughed and scolded, Stinky boy, are you kidding me? Xing Zhuzhong said with a smile on his face, Master taught the disciples a lot back then, and there is one sentence that the disciples will always keep in mind. Chen Qinglu said angrily, I'm getting old, my eyes are dim, my brain is not enough, don't let me guess, if you have a fart, let it go. Xing Zhuzhong said, Master once said to me, Zhuzhong, Master has only one disciple like you, and you can make more progress in the future to make Master happy. Chen Qinglu wondered, I actually said such serious words. Xing Zhuzhong said with a smile, it was because I was drinking too much. Master's drunken words are from the heart. Chen Qinglu rubbed his chin and muttered, damn it, there's an extra devil in the world, Xing Zhuzhong, so why do you have to blame me, Chen Qinglu? Xing Zhuzhong raised his hand, waved his sleeves, and pointed to Tonggishao, where the Confucian scholar Li Shixing was located. He smiled and said, all gentlemen, look at Du Yizi and kill Qingming for Haoren. Chen Qinglu was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly yelled, Stinky boy, you tell me what to do with this, you can rest assured, what's the difference between you and bullying your teacher and destroying your ancestors? Really afraid of what to come? At this moment, the young Taoist boy appeared out of thin air and gently pressed Xing Zhuzhong's arm, Scholar, don't be so angry. Beside the young Dao Tong, there was also a tall sword-carrying Daoist standing. Daozu, second disciple Yudo. Never thought that there would be another old master soon, he stretched out his hand to support Xing Zhuzhong's arm, lift it up, just lift it up, we scholars, why can't we say rhetoric? The most holy master also came, and there was the holy saint beside him. And a frowning old scholar. Chen Qinglu winked at the old scholar. The old scholar was silent. Old Shotsai, it's up to you to smooth things out. It's me again. The donkeys also give some fodder to gnaw on the mill. What's more, in such a big scene, with my thin arms and thin legs, can I blend in? Brother, don't you feel bad for your brother? Anyway, if something goes wrong with my big apprentice, I will go to Luopa Mountain to find your little apprentice. Then I try it. Hurry up. The old scholar laughed, stretched out his hand early, then held Jing Zhezhong's hand, shaking it vigorously. Brother Zheng, let's go, let's play a game of chess. I'm afraid to scare you, brother, my chess skills have skyrocketed over the years. Today is no different than before. If you don't hide your clumsiness, I will definitely win you. After being so troubled by the old scholar, the Taoist ancestor and the most holy teacher withdrew their hands almost at the same time. Li Xing smiled and said, there is no need to exchange money. Yu Dou asked, do you want to exchange money? You're not convinced. Jing Zhuzhong asked rhetorically, believe it or not, I'll exchange money with Lu Qin. The three of us, let's leave the 15 realms. The only one who was sitting, Han Chaosa, sat there dumbfounded, shivering. Dao Axian, what about Dao Axian? What is a real fairy fight? This scene is what it is. This is not the kind of harsh words that market teenagers meet on narrow roads. The old Shotsai sighed, Brother Zheng, why are you arguing with someone again? A gentleman should not speak up. If you can, don't speak up. Of course, it's best not to quarrel and fight. After all, people are really invincible. They all say that the shadow of a person's famous tree, only the wrong name is not given the wrong nickname. Is it a waste of fame? Besides, the realm of Lu Zhangjiao is very high. As for Li Shixing, forget it. After all, now it's my family. The most holy teacher probably couldn't listen anymore, so he coughed as a reminder to the old Shotsai not to fight over here. The old Shotsai is bitter. I call it the opposite. If not, can Jing Zhuzhong listen? In fact, Li Shixing had already noticed the situation here, so he wanted to come to Baidi City. The big deal was to play a game with Jing Zhuzhong in advance. If you weren't thinking about defending the road for the little bottle, it wouldn't make much difference whether the game was played early or late. It's just that Li Shixing was blocked by Li Xing. Li Xing just asked him to prepare for the debate of the three religions, and he didn't care about the rest. Dao Zhu looked up at the words. Jing Zhuzhong is indeed a rare talent in 10,000 years, and there is no need to compete for the first place. Dao Zhu said, the 3 games of chess, you can play how you want to play. The holy master nodded and said yes. The old Shotsai nodded and said, 3 games are good, 2 wins and 1 loss. It's more fair, such as playing chess, whether you are in a good mood that day, whether you have enough to eat, whether you drink good wine or bad wine, your chess strength fluctuates. And the man has a purpose. No matter what official Chao Gingxin is, he never asks him to do things. When they meet, they just ask for a drink. When they meet for a drink, they only talk about youthful and embarrassing things. Chao Gung's eyes were full of smiles, and he didn't mean to move. He stood on the side of the road and chatted with the fat man, as if he was in a trance. The chubby boy in the past has become an adult with a beard. The only difference is that I gained a few more laps. Probably because of the lack of earning money, and the fact that the elders of the family have not been very prosperous in the officialdom these years, and they have gone downhill a bit. For many years, there has been no one who is qualified to attend the Xiaoqiao meeting. Fatty just opened a restaurant in Changpu River. Compared with ordinary people, it is of course a daily gold, but in Ichi Lane, which is full of high gates, it is not even a so-called high or low. Among the disciples, they are all not in the stream. Some juniors, as long as they are willing to run the business in the south of Dadu, they have owned 1 or 2 Xianjia ferry boats on the mountain a few years ago. At this moment, several carriages passed by, obviously seeing the figure of Chao Shilang, and they stopped one after another. A young man covered in extravagance lifted the curtain and greeted Chao Shilang with a smile on his face. So the young man called the gentleman Uncle Chao, who was close to him. Chao Gingxin didn't bother to glance sideways, turned a deaf ear, just continued chatting with Fatty, and just left the junior Ichi Lane, who had done a lot of business there. After taking such a big face with a group of friends, the young man didn't dare to put his displeasure on his face, and he didn't even leave silently. Fatty reminded in a low voice, "Big brother Chao, don't make yourself difficult to be a person." Chao Shilang squinted at the convoy, just raised his chin, motioned to get out of the way, and cooled down. There were several rich and noble young people in that family who served as officials of the frontier in the Dali area. They didn't dare to fart at all, and hid in the carriage angrily, not even feeling ashamed. The children of Ichi Lane are also divided into 3, 6, 9, and 3. If Chao Gingxin cocked Erlang's legs, it's not because he didn't have a tutor, or because his family didn't see him outside, and when they visited each other for New Year's greetings and drinks, this was because Chao Gingxin deliberately performed the ceremony of the younger generation and did not want to sit on the throne. Fatty smiled and said, "Why don't you give face so much? It's embarrassing to teach others like me to pick their feet." Chao Gingxin put the wine gourd on his waist and smiled. These little bastards, with too stinky money in their pockets, put their tails up to the sky. The restaurant business is so big, they don't even know how to invite Uncle Chao for a drink. It's okay to have a drink. I don't know because I almost ordered a baby kiss with his aunt, and I settled the wine debt. I just saw it on the road and called out to Uncle Chao. It's worth a few wine dollars. Is there such a good thing? The fat man asked suspiciously, "Brother Chao, didn't you just pay off your wine debt today?" Chao Gingxin thought he had heard it wrong. What? Fatty explained, it turned out that all the liquor debts Chao Gingxin owed on the Changpu River, including his restaurant, were settled by a foreigner who called himself Hao Qin. Chao Gingxin's expression did not change. He thought about it for a while, and said with a smile, "You probably want to be close to the official hat of the servant. It doesn't matter, just assume that there is no such thing." The fat man is skeptical. Who has the guts to be so fat? Is it true that Dallas picket officials eat dry rice? The worst thing is calligraphy, painting, antiques, etc., and elegant bribes do not understand. If there is such a big battle, can Changpu restaurant be a place to hide? The problem is that it's not good to go to the temple with a pig's head. Who doesn't know that our Chao Shilang is notorious for drinking and accepting gifts and doing nothing? The table is good, and it is difficult outside the table. Chao Gingxin waved his hand and said, "Don't delay your viewing of the scenery. If you really encounter something in the future, go to Han Luer. He can help talk. On the ground near the Changpu River, his 6th-rank official can be a 3rd-rank Beijing officials are all brothers who have played together until the end of the year. If you know the basics, don't be too thin, and tell you something that doesn't make sense. When you encounter difficulties, you treat your brother as a brother too much, and you don't treat your brother as a brother. Let's just say that last year, it was about the size of a sesame and mung bean. I heard that someone was so wrong that he closed the door to drink stuffy wine, and his face was full of snot and tears. Who do you want to answer? When you finally make trouble at home, Uncle Weber will think that you are not clear. All the new friendships in the world come from troublesome others, and then run away to find opportunities to help people solve troubles. I don't even know what are you afraid of. If you are so afraid of bothering others like you are, don't make money like this in a restaurant if you have the ability. The fat man said dully, "My father never told me this." Chao Gung smiled angrily. "The brain grows on my neck, so I can use it more." Fatty nodded, understood, he'll definitely think more about it in the future. Chao Gingxin said with a smile, "Go home more when you have time, have a drink with your father and talk to your heart, and if it's a big deal, just admit to Uncle Weber that you're useless anyway, it's your own son." And you are really filial, compared to that. The filial and unfilial neighbors among the neighbors are not much better than them. Also, remember to get married and get married quickly. Don't worry about anything, just let Uncle Weber hold his grandchildren, then you will see him on your side. There are no smiley face. The fat man hummed. Chow Gung said solemnly, finally, I have to remind you. The fat man said, Brother Chow, tell me, I'm listening. Chow Gingshin said with a wicked smile, Weichi Lane is famous for its smooth roads, so don't make your carriage bumpy all the way. Uncle Weber made a big joke when he was young. The fat man suddenly widened his eyes, my father. After all, in my impression, he was the father of the Minister of Rights for many years. He was a gentleman who had read the books of sages, and he was so rigid and pedantic. Chow Gingshin said, don't say it was me. Fatty lowered the curtains and was so short by Chow Shirlang, as if he was not so afraid of his father all of a sudden. Even Chow Gingshin was no exception. All of them were beaten up by their fathers. The only difference was whether to pull out a jade belt, or use a scabbard, a whip or a ruler. It's okay to cause trouble outside, especially the fights between peers. The elders almost don't care about it. It doesn't matter if the nose is blue and the face is swollen, but there are two things that will definitely be beaten. One is relying on family background and not studying well. Dare to contradict Mr. Jiashu, this kind of situation is mostly on the side of Cheer Street, where the door is full, and bullying girls of the same age. A violent beating will definitely be enough, no matter how busy the officials in the two streets are. This group of generals and ministers dressed in yellow and purple must be served by family law when they return home. Chow Gingshin walked to the house alone, as if asking himself, talking to himself with his inner voice. Mr. Ma, has Chen Pingon already guessed the truth? At that time, he deliberately didn't say anything in the small courtyard. Because of selling your senior brother's face. Didn't you care about me? An old master who has served as a staff member of Chow Duzhou for many years in Huaihuang County replied indifferently, he has a delicate mind, the small courtyard was testing you everywhere, he must have guessed it, otherwise he will not help you settle the sake bill. I have acquiesced in your pursuit of wealth and wealth at risk. As for me, I am just a shadowy ghost, what kind of senior brother can I be, and what kind of face is there to speak of? Chow Gingshin rubbed his brows and felt a headache. He cautiously asked if there would be irreparable sequelae. Is it because I was greedy and lost a lot? The old master who disappeared without a trace sneered, this is the end of the matter, and the boat is done, so what's the point of regretting again? Chow Gingshin began to cheat, Mr. Ma, the Earth Branch Jade card was a clue you gave me at the beginning. According to the historical background, you are Chen Pingan's uncle, and it was really settled by the Autumn Queen. You have to help me. What? The old master surnamed Ma remained silent. He didn't recognize the little junior brother. Just like what Chow Gingshin said to Zhou Haijing in the small courtyard, all wine is fake, let alone words. It's a big gamble. Because there was no such letter at all, the national teacher Cui Yu did not instruct Chow Gingshin to do anything, and naturally he did not instruct Chow Gingshin to take charge of the Dolly branch. As for the Earth Branch Jade plaque in the yard that had been abandoned for many years, it was indeed an important clue that the Yin spirit beside him leaked to Chow Gingshin. Deliberately, he came from the school inspection of the secret library of the Ministry of Punishment. And this aide, surnamed Ma Mingzhan, was a teacher of Shania Academy before Dali moved. He was the junior brother of the mountain chief Qi Jingchen and rushed to Aquarius with Mao Xiaodong. Ma Zhan was also a disciple of Wenqing, but it is not the kind of disciple who has been passed down by himself, and his cultural identity is similar to Mao Xiaodong, who is currently serving as the secretary of the Rights Academy. But with Mao Xiaodong's situation, the difference is one thought, the difference between clouds and mud. One is already a scholar who can participate in the discussions of the Confucian temple in China again and again. The key is to be able to meet frequently with the gentleman who restored the Confucian temple's divine position, but the other has become a ghost who is only a ghost after his death. When it comes to Wensheng's lineage, the younger generation probably doesn't know that Wensheng had a disciple, Ma Zhan. The old Xiuzai once came to the capital and Chunshan Academy, and settled down in the loud house. From the beginning to the end, Ma Zhan did not show up, and the most respected gentleman in his life did not look for him. He may have long known that there is still a ghost Ma Zhan in the capital of Dali, but the husband may not know it, or he may know but pretend not to know. Ma Zhan still has a hidden identity now, and is one of the temple blessings in the temple of the emperors and emperors of the past dynasties in the capital of Dali. In the capital, the only person who can talk is the treasurer Yang, who is currently serving as the of-night tours in the temple of the city god. This is naturally an escape route arranged by the old man in the backyard of the pharmacy. He has become a of mountains and rivers, and can continue to protect the family incense. In a pharmacy handed down from generation to generation by their ancestors of the Yang family, the old man in the backyard, although his name was Yang, was regarded as the elder of the Yang clan by the townspeople, but he had nothing to do with the Yang clan in Taoya Lane. Ma Zhan finally said that Cui Yu deliberately kept me, who was not a ghost or a ghost, by your side to help you manage a Longquan kiln supervisor. Cui Yu must have been waiting for such a day. Chen Pingan is very smart, of course you can guess, so as long as you can make good use of the branch in the future, Chen Pingan is willing to pretend that the letter really existed. Chao Gingxin asked curiously, Master Cui did it on purpose for you to end up in such a land. After so many years, you don't remember or hate him at all. Ma Zhan said indifferently, it's up to you to take the blame, you can't blame him. In his honor and disgrace, there was a saying that hurt people more deeply than spears and halberds. In fact, some silence is more hurtful. Of course, Ma Zhan doesn't think that his husband can't see him, and there is any problem. The phrase, blame oneself, is Ma Zhan's best conclusion about himself. Ma Zhan doesn't even want to see Chen Pingan, let alone talk about his husband. But deep in his heart, Ma Zhan hoped that his husband would still remember him, but he didn't dare to meet him. Chao Gingxin said with emotion, if you can't do it, you should ask yourself instead. This is from the famous saying of Yasheng. Therefore, Ma Zhan said a few words of Wensheng's teachings. Sir has a saying, follow the Tao and not the king, and the etiquette should be based on the people's heart. Those who know themselves do not blame others, and those who know their destiny do not blame heaven. Honestly, nothing else matters. How brilliant Chao Gingxin is, of course I can hear it. The old master Ma Zhan, who has been living in guilt for so many years, every sentence means something. The sentence is his only pursuit now, and as for the last sentence, of course, it refers to the close disciple of Wensheng's lineage, Chen Pingan. For this little junior brother, from the previous dialogue between Ma Zhan and Chao Gingxin, it can be seen that the old master's approval and appreciation are beyond words. Chao Gingxin smiled and said, arrived at the door of the house, how many drinks can I go in? Ma Zhan shook his head, I'm such an invisible ghost, it's enough to be a temple congratulation to the gate, and it's not appropriate to set foot in your wise family. Chao Gingxin no longer retains the old master who is strict in everything and everything. Ma Zhan suddenly asked, Chao Gingxin, with your identity and intelligence, why are you so eager to seek success? Chao Gunk shook his sleeves in his heart, raised his arms, and pretended to hold a cup to drink. If you are not satisfied with 100 in life, you must use the cup in your hand. Ma Zhan was silent for a moment, then shook his head, you are a cheap practitioner, and you say that you are not satisfied with your life. Chao Gingxin patted the wine gourd on his waist, and said with a smile, what immortal, just a drunkard. The duty lies. Ma Zhan bid farewell to Chao Gingxin, and immediately returned to the Emperor Temple. The other temple Zhu delivered a letter, saying that it was sent by a Beijing official named Sun Chu, and gave it to Ma Zhan by name and surname. This secret letter, which is hard to say whether it is an invitation or a letter from the family, is set up with a layer of unskilled restrictions on landscapes. Opening the envelope, the letter contained only 3 sentences. The master has said that life and death are good, and humanity is complete. I sincerely invite my brothers to go to Luo Pao Mountain to meet Mr. It was not appropriate to reminisce in the capital of Dali before, and my husband misses brother Ma very much. Ma Zhan put the letter back into the envelope, and sat in the lonely and desolate gatehouse. Back then, when the old scholar came to the capital, he appeared on the other side of the building, and on the other side of the alley, the old scholar often twisted his beard, as if waiting for someone. Later, Wen Xing went to Chunshan Academy, which was equivalent to revealing his identity in the Dali officialdom. After that, the old Xiuzai stopped going to the alley. When the closed disciple raised a word, the old scholar who was so talkative on Qin Pingan's side rarely jumped his feet and became anxious, swearing, saying that this Ma Zhan was in a proper manner, knowing that the gentleman had already arrived in the capital, and it was only a few steps away. Do you know that there is such a respect for teachers and respect for teachers who are students in the world? Is it possible that I, the gentleman, want to find him? See you ass. That is, Chen Pingan, if you change it to left and right, or Mao Xiaodong, it is estimated that he will be going to help his husband swear. Chen Pingan continued to persuade the husband, saying why he was angry with senior brother Ma, and took out the temperament and mind of the husband. The old Xiuzai seemed to be really angry. He only said that he didn't see it, but he refused to see it. No one could intercede for Ma Zhan. It's ridiculous. He used to be a good student, although he was just like Xiaodong. But the victory lies in respecting the teacher and respecting the way. Back then, it was impossible for Mao Xiaodong to move the chair. Now this kid Ma Zhan is a high-ranking official, and he has a bigger frame than the sky, so he doesn't recognize his husband. Chen Pingan will force him to take him with him. Going to the emperor temple in the capital of Dali, even if the old scholar was dragged by the arm of the most doted disciple, he still stood like a loose pine. Don't go, let alone leave the alley. As long as I go out of the courtyard today, I can't give Ma Zhan be a student. At that time, Chen Pingan had no choice but to give up. Speaking of his so-called closed-door disciple, it turns out that he can't say anything on the side of the master, and he should be normal. The old Xiuzai had to go back and comfort the closed disciple, saying that it is not the same thing at all, but you can't feel that way. Why are you angry with Mr. Ma? And sure enough, we all have to blame Ma Zhan. Look, it's right that Mr. doesn't see him. Finally, the old Xiuzai sighed and explained to Chen Pingan, saying that Ma Zhan needed to take care of himself. Chen Pingan smiled and said that he had guessed it, and the students were concerned about Mr. Fallen Mountain. As soon as Lu Shirlu and Bai arrived, they added a few more white-haired boys to the chronology. They had nothing to do and ran to the top of the mountain alone, wrinkled and gloomy. That's Bai Yi, who is a big living person. After finally meeting each other, he didn't chat for a day or two, which was really embarrassing. At that time, in the Suishu Palace of the Qingming world, the palace owner Wu Shuangjiang was more in love with Su Zi's poems, and his Taoist companion, the female cultivator with the Taoist name, Natural, had average cultivation qualifications, but she was worthy of praise. A poem called Obsessed with Bai Yi. For her hobby, she collected more Bai Yi's latest poems in her hometown, Wu Shuangjiang, who never asked for help, and Zuanduguan, Wyong Palace, and the Poetic Paradise, owed a lot of favors. Of course it's all paid back. As for whether this kind of transaction is worthwhile, Wu Shuangjiang has the final say. As for why he prefers Su Zi, Wu Shuangjiang said that Su Zi is happy in the midst of suffering, so he is open-minded. On the other hand, Bai is too smooth, it belongs to the extreme of happiness and sadness, but Bai is indeed unparalleled in talent, especially in the fact that he has enough fairy energy and is mighty. Today, I finally saw Bai Yi, who was outside the book, but she felt embarrassed. Her current skin is indeed a bit shabby. The white-haired boy sat on the white jade railing on the top of Jilling Peak, sighing and worrying. If only I had the face of the ancestor of the hidden official, I guess I have been drinking with Mr. Bai Yi by now. Zhu Lian took a walk so far, with a stooped figure, with his hands behind his back, and his feet on a pair of cloth shoes with fine needles and threads. It was Nuanshu who asked the millet grains to be distributed to everyone, and they all had a share. The white-haired boy turned his back to the old cook and waved his hand as a greeting. Zhu Lian approached the railing, looked at a landscape painting with layers of landscape from thick ink to light brush, and asked, "Editor, do you have something on your mind?" The white-haired boy sighed. "It's fortunate that the ancestor of the hidden official was not there, otherwise I would be embarrassed. The relationship between men and women, there is a house in the house, and there is a building upstairs. The people in the bureau can't tell the truth. If you commit a capital crime, it is the most difficult to prove your innocence." Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Love is a willful, naughty child." When he grew up, he changed his name to Responsibility, and his alias was Tacit Understanding. The white-haired boy grinned and said, "Old cook, I've finally lost sight of it. My dialogue with Bai is just pure worship. How can it involve male and female love?" Zhu Lian smiled and said, "I didn't say that you like Bai Yi, you just admire it. It's a good thing for people who are self-proclaimed talents who don't worship Bai. Like me, you have to prepare a draft beforehand before you have the courage to get together. Bai Yi, go ahead." Zhu Lian knew very well that she didn't talk to Bai more, and she was worried that Bai Yi, who came from the Xuandu Temple of Qingming, would attract the attention of two high-level people, which would also involve Wu Shuangjiang. The white-haired boy has now adopted a pseudonym for himself, Kong Ho. He clearly wanted the two bamboos to cuddle with each other, but in his heart he regretted teaching his husband and son-in-law to find a marquee. The white-haired boy shook his legs. "I am so liked by a person, and the person I like doesn't seem to know how to like each other. In short, spoiled. I am accustomed to asking people for something, but I don't know how to pay." She asked, "Is this the truth?" "It took me many years to figure it out." Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Yes or not?" The white-haired boy wondered, "How?" Zhu Lian leaned over the railing. "There are some truths. Actually, it's not that you don't understand. It's just that you have to say it from an outsider like me." The white-haired boy laughed at himself. "Ha, is it a foreign monk who likes to recite sutras?" Zhu Lian shook his head and said slowly, "I used to travel around the rivers and lakes by myself in my hometown, aimlessly. One time on the way to the mountain, I met an old monk who came down the mountain in white clothes and held a green piano. There are thousands of mountains and rivers in the world. Since we met, it must be the predestined law, so we stopped each other and talked a little about the Buddha Dharma. The result was a good match. We talked from the setting sun to the sun sinking into the mountains. Finally, I felt inspired and said that the old monk recited the scriptures. It is a derogatory word in the market, but it may be in Buddhism, but it is actually a very high state. He said that I have both Buddhism and wisdom roots." Just listening to the old cook talk about his old stories, the white-haired boy felt a lot more peaceful. The white-haired boy asked, "Mr. Zhu, in your hometown, there were so many women who liked you. Didn't you ever fall in love with anyone? Is it because they paid you wrong all the time?" Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Of course I was tempted, but it has nothing to do with a woman's appearance or family background. The temptation to become a husband and wife and grow old together seems to have never happened. Rich women are arrogant, and Xiaojiabiyu has to wear gold and silver. After all, it is not very pleasing, but some of the pictures are really beautiful. The group of girls ran to the eaves to hide from the rain. Only one woman, Jingchai cloth skirt, stood a little far away. Slender fingers with slightly calluses gently stroked the hair on the temples, and she was virtuous. It's very touching. The young man always pursues the allure of the country and the city, and an old man like me just wants a glimpse of it to be pleasing to the eye. The white-haired boy gave a thumbs up. Mr. Zhu, to tell the truth, when it comes to the knowledge of love between men and women, you are not inferior to the hidden official ancestor. Zhu Lian smiled and shook his head. How can this be compared? The gap between me and the young master is a lot worse than you and Qin Lingjun. The white-haired boy laughed. If you were talking about slapping horses, the old cook would be the second. As for the first, it has now become a foregone conclusion. It must be the old Jia. Seeing that she didn't believe it, Zhu Lian pointed to the distant landscape. The same picture. Did the ordinary master see it, or did the cultivator see it and think it looks good? The white-haired boy said, of course, it's even more beautiful after seeing it with the naked eye. Zhu Lian nodded. That's why, the love of a young man is like splashing ink, and it pours out on the paper in a flash. The details are clear, rigorous as meticulous painting, and the words and deeds are meticulous. Dare to ask where is the magic? The white-haired boy thought about it and couldn't help but exclaimed, it's chewy. After Zhu Lian put his hands together, he smiled and said, in my opinion, the real love between men and women is that a dumb person eats huanglian, and others can't stop it, and it's not enough if you don't eat it. The white-haired boy nodded and slapped his fist. Take it down and take it down, you must learn from Nailan Yu and take notes. Zhu Lian smiled and dismissed it. The white-haired boy said in a heartfelt voice, the same person came out of the picture scroll. It seems that only Mr. Zhu, who has changed several names on the side of the hidden official ancestor. Zhu Lian addressed Qin Pingan, who used to be the master, the young master, and the son. After all, women are more attentive. Zhu Lian smiled and said, it's not a name, how can I call it smoothly? The white-haired boy didn't bother to care about this, and said, someone said that the real beauty in the world, when a woman sees it, she is not ashamed, but only feels pity for me. Old cook, is that really true? Zhu Lian thought for a while. I'm blind, and I can't remember a woman's face. The white-haired boy smiled and said, old cook, you are so cheap, you don't practice swords so much. If Chief Zhou and Xiaomo had an invisible battle for the Great Road, then the white-haired boy and the old cook, one was the #1 confidant of the hidden official ancestor, and the other was the big butler of Luopa Mountain, and they were actually rivals. Zhu Lian laughed and said, when I was young, I really practiced swordsmanship for a few years. It's hard to say whether it is a killing skill. Anyway, everyone in the world says I play swords, and it looks good. In the study room of Li Bao, Minister of Rights of Qingyuan State. Li Baozhen quickly stabilized his mind and spread his hands. What have I done? It seems that there is nothing. Lu Min's request to die has nothing to do with me. Mr. Chen also has to thank me for helping me catch this fish. Lu Min, who grew up with him, is still very dangerous. Not asking for anything means that there is no clue to follow. Pure malice means that Lu Min's Taoism is pure. The later he speaks, the bitten the more it hurts. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Li Zhizao, you are called a thief with a guilty conscience. Li Baozhen bent his fingers, tapped the chair handle lightly, and asked, your means of isolating heaven and earth is a magical power. Li Baozhen can still understand a little bit if he doesn't use his inner voice, but what if it's his own thoughts? In the dark, Li Baozhen was extremely sure of his thoughts, and they were all blocked by Chen Pingan. The first time he saw Chen Pingan, Li Baozhen was indeed a little flustered, and he subconsciously wanted to move the rescuers, of course his elder brother Li Shixing. To this day, Li Baozhen is still not sure about the big brother's roots. He only knows one thing. No matter who he encounters, what he encounters, or what difficulties he encounters, as long as Li Shixing comes forward, it will be fine. This mentality is exactly the same as that of Beidasheng Lu Qiqing. It doesn't matter if you have something to do, there are senior brothers there anyway. Chen Pingan ignored Li Baozhen, walked to the table, looked at the two bowls, nodded and smiled, very impressive. If Gu Kan sees it, she will probably consider Li Zhizhi as a confidant. Li Baozhen's face changed slightly. Xiao Mahuai held the green bamboo stick, leaned back against the door, smiled, and looked at the same age as his son. According to the sage language, a gentleman can be deceived, and there is an old saying in the market that has a similar meaning: it is better to provoke a gentleman than a villain. Chen Pingan turned around and leaned against the table, with his arms wrapped around his sleeves, and looked at Lu Min. What do you think? You were told by Li Baozhen, and you just have pure malice towards me. Lu Min said, Li Baozhen will definitely kill me, then I must save myself. This is the last question my master gave me. Chen Pingan asked, after solving the problem, what about after the difficulties? Mr. Lu has plans for you. My master has no plans. Lu Min shook her head and said, I will join Mr. Chen's Luo Pao Mountain and be a completely non-existent person with no deadline. Chen Pingan was dumbfounded for a while. How could he be so rude? Lu Min said, if the realm is high, everything can come true, and the world is not this world. What the patriarchs of the three religions want to do in the 14th realm, why should there be a Zhongte Confucian temple in Haoran, and why should Qingming have a Baiyu Jing? When I went to Luopa Mountain, of course Mr. Qin could not use Lu Min, and I would definitely not superfluous in anything, but Luopa Mountain must have a presence similar to Lu Min, just in case. If Luopa Mountain never created the next sect, Chui the gentleman never left Luopao Mountain and went to Tongya Continent to spread branches and leaves, and Luopao Mountain has me or not, it really makes no difference. Chen Pingan was silent for a moment, then smiled and said, it sounds very reasonable, there are benefits without harm, but I don't agree. Lu Min said, then I will wait patiently, choose to concentrate on cultivation in Huaihuang County, and wait for the day when Mr. Chen thinks I am useful. Once it is useful, it will be of great use. Chen Pingan asked, then I'm even more curious, what do you want? Lu Min pointed at Chen Pingan's cloth shoes. Chen Pingan turned his head and asked with a smile, Li Zhizao, can you guess the answer? Li Baozhen shook his head, this Lu Min is probably insane, how can I guess? However, he found that Chen Pingan at the moment seemed to have changed a person. To be precise, he had finally changed back to a person. This made Li Baozhen's heartstrings tense to the point that they were about to break. It's like a trivial ant, but because it is stepping on the back of Mr. Chen's shoe, the ant can take advantage of the opportunity to see the scenery farther and higher. Lu Min's eyes were hot, and she said solemnly, I believe that one day, as long as you follow in Mr. Chen's footsteps, you can accomplish a feat that I can't imagine now. But at a certain moment in the future that can be called a big joint, there must be a place for me, Lu Min, between heaven and earth. It may be that I have done something, said a certain sentence, in the mighty torrent of history. Among them, Lu Min can prove that she has been to the world once, and changed the direction of the river to a certain extent. Xiao Mo thought it was very interesting, and after listening to Jun's words, it was a worthwhile trip, so he said in his heart, young master, it is Lu Min's sincerity without a doubt. Chen Pingan turned around again, bowed his head and bent down, staring at the two bowls on the table, one bowl of white water and one bowl of ink, stretched out his finger to dip a drop of ink, moved his finger, the drop of ink on the belly of the finger, on the surface of the white bowl. Before he could fall, he turned his back to Li Baozhen and Lu Min, his voice was smiling, you too. Guess what each of you wants for each other's life and death, you can just give the answer in your heart. Anyway, Xiao Mo can hear it, there are only 4 answers, and it is not difficult to guess. It is nothing more than Li Baozhen giving birth to Lu Minqing, Li Baozhen dead and Lu Minqing alive, Li Baozhen and Lu Mining all dead, Li Baozhen and Lu Mining all alive. If the two sides have different answers, but Li Zhizao guessed, if you can live, Lu Min will die. On the other hand, if Li Zhizao dies, Lu Min will live. But if there is such a coincidence, your choice is the same, and both will die. Li Baozhen said with a sneer, playing with things is frustrating, let alone manipulating people's hearts. Besides, in the great Li Mingguan, you kill me if you say it. Who do you think you are? Chen Pingan just stared at the ink on his fingertips that was about to fall into the white bowl, then changed to an easier guess. You two must be proficient in arithmetic. I believe the difficulty will be very small. Assuming these four possibilities sex, you can guess any one of them. It can be the correct answer. Both parties can survive. So what do you think the probability of surviving? 0, 1/4, 1/2, 1. To be fair, correct the answer must be among the four options. Why don't you guess the possibility? Whoever guesses right can leave this study alive immediately. Li Zhizhuo will continue to serve as your master minister and behind-the-scenes monarch. Lu Min, you can even join Luopa Mountain immediately. Of course, there is another option, which is to not join Luopa Mountain for the time being, in exchange for the death of Li Bao, a minister of the Qinghuan kingdom, who died without a problem. You can guess, first come, first served. Lu Min actually closed her eyes and looked like she was waiting to die. Li Baozhen was still thinking about it over there, guessing the so-called correct answer. There was a knock on the door, and Li Shixing smiled and said, Baozhen, don't guess. The question that Mr. Chen asked is wrong, so naturally there is no so-called correct answer. It is true that Li Baozhen can pass it on to his eldest brother without any words or thoughts, but he can't stop Li Shixing from being able to fortune-telling. Chen Pingan sighed, and his eyes signaled that Xiao Mo didn't need to stop him. Li Shixing opened the door and saw Chen Pingan with golden eyes and a little guy lying in his bun. It was just a cover-up method, and neither Li Baozhen nor Lu Min could see the little lotus man who followed Chen Pingan away from Luopao Mountain. A false alarm. Chen Pingan smiled and said, in the future, please take care of Mr. Li Zhizao. There is no reason to be a thief for 1,000 days to prevent a thief for 1,000 days. Li Shixing smiled and nodded, I'll persuade him. If Li Baozhen was granted amnesty, he didn't want to stay in this room for a moment, so he got up quickly and came to Li Zhixing's side. Li Shixing said, Baozhen, you need to do things well from beginning to end. Tomorrow, you will first hand over the affairs of the Qinghuan State Rights Department, and then go back to the Dolly Weaving Bureau. Li Baozhen nodded. Li Shixing actually had some headaches. It is completely conceivable that in the future, when Li Baozhen was at a bottleneck in the nascent soul realm, he would sit opposite to Chen Pingan, a demon manifested in his heart, where he repeatedly guessed the answer and quarreled endlessly. If he was a little late, there might still be several real arithmetic problems waiting for Li Baozhen. This problem is just a side dish. If he is not careful, Li Baozhen will lose his mind and become an ancient hermit who wears wild fox fur by the long chain of the river of time. Big liberty. Li Shixing said with his heart. Jing Juzhong and Yu Dou left Baidi City and went to the outer world. Chen Pingan wondered, what are you going to do outside the sky? The two walked out of the study together, and Li Shixing and Chen Pingan roughly explained the situation of Beidasheng. Chen Pingan asked, what is the outcome of this competition? Li Hisung said, let's not lose if we don't win. Some insiders, Li Shixing should not reveal more secrets. For example, in Baidi City, Jing Juzhong and Yu Dou said with a smile, they have come. Yu Dou, who was wearing a robe with a sword on his back and followed his master across the world, replied on the spot, which was exactly what I wanted. Anyway, the two sides met and did not want to say a word. 24 realms, and among the 14 realms, they are the ones that are very capable of fighting, and they are not small in anger. This brief and concise appointment was not stopped by the most holy master, and Daozu also felt that it was nothing. Chen Pingan said, "This means that as long as Yu Do sits in Baiyujing, even Mr. Jing will lose." Li Shixing nodded and said, "At least for the time being, what will happen in the future cannot be deduced." Chen Pingan looked strange. Li Shixing smiled and said, "Seek truth from facts. I have something to say. I have nothing to be ashamed of." No longer seeing a pair of golden eyes, Chen Pingan raised his hands and rubbed his face, helplessly said, "What the is going on with Li Baozhen? How can I be Mr. Li's younger brother and Xia Baoping's elder brother, and I can't be someone else today? Get used to him." Once Chen Pingan is included in a certain list in his heart, just like Xingyang Mountain in the past, then Li Baozhen's weaving officer has done his best. Li Shixing was obviously even more helpless. Every family has a scripture that is difficult to read. But don't worry, it's definitely not an example. Chen Pingan originally wanted to say a few more words, but just thought that the other party was Li Shixing. Forget it. There are some simple truths like, pride and extravagance are selfish and smart people will only become more and more difficult to teach. Li Shixing probably guessed Chen Pingan's thoughts and said with a smile, "Don't worry." Chen Pingan suddenly raised his head. Li Shixing and Xiao Mo also looked up at the sky. The battle outside the sky actually caused ripples in the vast sky, and layers of halos as big as a giant lake rippled. Chen Pingan murmured, "I thought it would be a more peaceful one fight." For example, the battlefield is located in a dojo similar to that of the most holy teacher or Taoist ancestor. Li Shixing said, "The battlefield is indeed located in a secret realm. It was thrown out by the Taoist ancestors, but it is relatively close to the vast world, but Yu Do and Jing Juzhong have nothing to hide." Bai Yujing's second headmaster once said that he was really invincible. The only one who would be used to talk about things and criticize them might be the only one who had never really fought with the two of them, so he was not really invincible. The little master of the vast world, Li Sheng. The sword immortal of the great wall of sword Qi, Qin Qingdu. As for Beta Sheng Jing Juzhong, the real body, the Yin God, and the outer body of the Yang already possess 314 realms at the same time. Especially the last, Jing Juzhong, is like a direct copy of Daozu. Jing Zhezhong's heart, art, and Tao. All three. This matter, sooner or later, will be known to the world. With this prototype of the Tao in Jing Zhezhong's mind, it doesn't matter what the time of the outside world is. But even the mountain cultivators who have been informed of this amazing news one after another are still not aware of a deeper fact for the time being. In addition to being the ultimate in people and people, Jing Juzhong still has a hidden geographical advantage, because Jing Zhezhong's dojo is equivalent to being in the vast world where Baidi City is located, and in the wild world where one of the 14 realms of Hedao is located. The Qingming world after Daozu left. The key is that when the patriarchs of the three sects are there, Jing Juzhong can do this. What will happen to Jing Juzhong after the patriarchs of the three sects disperse? Make an analogy. The realm of the monks on the mountain is high and low, like a majestic Dharma standing on the earth. Every ascension and the 14th realm in the world, of course, have their own greatness, but almost all the monks on the mountain have their own way. Their respective realms, their Dharma heights, have never touched the bottleneck of the sky. However, the height of Jing Zhezhong's Dharma looks like it can only be that high just because there are three sect patriarchs in the way. Li Shixing asked, "Did you bring any wine?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "What wine to drink?" Li Shixing smiled and said, "The glutinous rice wine in our hometown is fine." Chen Pingan took out a pot of Dong Bancheng's glutinous rice wine from his sleeve and handed it to Li Shixing. He couldn't help laughing. "It looks like it's coming, but it's not cheap." Just because there is a golden signboard of Lizhu, coupled with the folk kiln celadone jug fired in the small town Longyao, It is almost sold for the price of Xianzhou wine, and some people really buy it. Li Shixing took a sip of the soft-flavored glutinous rice wine and said, I'm not speaking ill of Jing Juzhong. Leaving aside his Taoism, Jing Juzhong wants to seek surgery outside of surgery. I have to be a little wary of him because of the number of cultivation paths I have taken, and all the current and future cultivators of the 14th realm need to be careful as well, because no one knows whether the single plank bridge under their feet is there or not. Maybe one day, it will be in contact with Jing Zhezhong's road, and there will be a battle for the road inexplicably. Chen Pingan nodded. Li Shixing smiled and said, I have a heart. I have to admit one thing, it seems that Jing Juzhong has been the most free for thousands of years. Li Shixing said, what is the effect of the idea? Chen Pingan said, thoughts arise naturally, which is more than half less than that of senior brother Cui back then. Try to curb your thoughts, at least half more than Cui Dongshan. Li Shixing nodded and said, it's amazing. The former is difficult in the word natural, and the latter's restraint and cessation are not the sitting and forgetting concentration of ordinary qi practitioners. It is also different from the Xinzhai of Baiyujing Taoist officials and the Zen meditation of Buddhism. Li Shixing said with a smile, Aquarius followed sect master Cui and the others on the ferry back to their hometown. I will go to protect the Taoist. Chen Pingan quickly thanked him, and Li Shixing replied angrily, you are her brother. Xiao Mo held back his laughter. Chen Pingan glanced at the sky, took a deep breath, retracted his gaze, and said goodbye to Li Shixing, who returned the salute. Li Shixing took the lead to leave Qingyuan country and went to Lialongking at the southern end of Aquarius Island. Xiao Mo suddenly said in his heart, young master, I want to accept Lu Min as a disciple. Chen Pingan asked curiously, is he Jianshou? Xiao Mo shook his head and said, no. Chen Pingan suddenly realized that Xiao Mo was not only proficient in swordsmanship, but also learned a variety of things. It was more than enough to teach Lu Min, who was in the middle five. Xiao Mo said, I accept Lu Min as an anonymous disciple. He has nothing to do with Luopa Mountain. Chen Pingan nodded and said, I can rest assured that you accept the apprentice. But you have to let him hang for a few days. Forget it, there is no difference, you and Lu Min can just talk about it. Lu Min was smart enough and thoughtful enough to meet a master like Xiao Mo, which seemed to be an immortal family fate that Lu Min should have hit. Taking Xiao Mo back to Luopao Mountain, Chen Pingan went to the bamboo building first, and then hurried to see senior brother Jun Qian. On the mountain, Xiago actually recovered his true face, and in the posture of Bai Jing, drinking with senior brother Jun Qian over there, it can be said that he drank heavily, and he no longer looked like a charming girl. Seeing Xiao Mo returning to the mountain, Bai Jing just snorted and smiled. Chen Pingan called out to senior brother Jun Qian, Lu Shirlu nodded with a smile, and asked junior brother and Xiao Mo to sit down and drink together. Chen Pingan hesitated. Jun Qian smiled and said, Bai Yi was dragged by Wei Shanjun to see Mr. Day in Piyun Mountain, and the millet grains followed along. Chen Pingan didn't think about going to Piyun Mountain to meet Bai. Treating guests like this is too out of place. Maybe even if the younger brother is going, Jun Qian, who is a senior brother, will stop him. Bai Jing and Xiao Mo are old acquaintances with Jun Qian. Of course, they were not friends in the ancient times. Relatively speaking, Jun Qian and Xiao Mo are more familiar. Jun Qian said, Mr. Mo, have a drink here, have a drink, and you can go to the Qingming world at any time. The old Guanzhu is waiting for you at Mingyue Haocai, an old friend whom you haven't seen in 10,000 years. You can then have a second meal. Xiao Mo smiled and nodded, you can accompany Mr. Junqian to drink more. The vast world, the Qingming world, the Lotus world and the latest colorful world, the roads that cross the world are relatively stable, like the tributaries of the long river of time that have been built with embankments. In addition to reminiscing about the past with the master of Bishao Cave, Xiaoma also had two things instructed by his son, one of which was related to the credit moon, the Taoist companion of sect master Lu. Before Daoist Bishao visited Luopao Mountain, he made a deal with sect master Cui and took away the authentic work of the Bluestone Cliff with his supernatural powers. The Bluestone Cliff with many pits and seats on the Longshu River is commonly known as Qingniabei by the people of the town. Cui Dongshan, who had carefully inspected the various landscapes in Lizhu Cave, could not find the slightest oddity, and was taken away by the old master. No wonder Cui Dongshan failed to pick up this big leak. First, the realm is not enough, and secondly, in this old site of Lizidongshan, there are few people and places that can be called strange and mysterious. The young man has nothing to do with it, there are always times when he is wrong. That green cliff is a moon palace mirror that once fell into the bottom of the lotus flower. Inside the mirror is a round of the ancient bright moon with a high rank. A little bit of consonance, the spirit of eternity. As for how this treasure traveled all the way to the Lizhu Cave, and took root and turned into a stone cliff, it must be related to the last real dragon in the world. As for Gu Kan's guess to Lu Xianying, it can't be said to be off-topic. In fact, he did guess a part of the facts, and it was related to Xiangjuan, the master of Lingfei Palace of Dongting, and Qi Yunshan, the old Baiyue. It's just that the most important opportunity of the credit month is to return to the bright moon and bright colors. It's just that there is nothing left to return to the master. Last time Lao Guanju paid a lot of money to buy the green cliff, and Chen Pingan wanted to buy it back again. Previously, Cui Dongshan bargained for it, but this time it was replaced by Xiao Mo. If there is no Xiao Mo, it is estimated that there is no need to talk about it. As for the second matter, it has to do with the female warrior Qin Yuanji. Because Daoist Bishao was at the gate of the mountain at the time, and he even chatted with Qin Yuanji, who was walking on Jiling Peak Shinto every day, and asked her if her name was Qin Yuanji. Her surname Qin is interpreted as the mountain is small and high, and the appearance is extremely steep, and the Mandarin duck machine is more popular and easy to understand. Chen Pingan had been in Yunlu before and asked Lu Qin, Qin Yuanji, and her family, whether it was the Longzhou he moved to, and then Luopao Mountain. Lu Qin just pretended to be stupid. Before Xiao Mo travels far, reminds Xiago again. Bai Jing just waved his hand, indicating that with her in Luopao Mountain, it would be no accident for Qin Shanju to retreat. When Xiao Mo walked into the courtyard, Hua Hong flew into the sky. Bai Jing always sat at the table, she frowned and took a sip of wine. Jun Qian laughed loudly, "I'll just say, he won't be jealous." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Not necessarily." Bai Jing's eyes lit up and he regained the appearance of a girl with a mink hat, "Really?" Chen Pingan said, "Guess, not sure." Xiago rubbed his mink hat and pouted, "Ask Mr. Zhu, and you'll be right." In the blue sky, two bright moons hang together. Like the eyes of a beautiful woman, the place where you stare is the world. The tall old Guanju walked out of the hut. The Taoist boy squatting on the ground is a bit strange, and there are people who need their master to go out to entertain guests. There was a thin and shabby Taoist priest outside the house. It was almost a no-brainer. Lao Guanju commented with a smile on his pioneering disciple, "Yener is bad, but good seedling." Wang Yuanlu felt that these two statements had nothing to do with him, but he didn't have the courage to refute them. Xiao Mo nodded and said, "It is rare to have a good aptitude for cultivation. As for the person in the room who helped concoct alchemy, let's not mention it. The only thing that is desirable is that he is still diligent in cultivating the Tao. It's a late bloomer, it doesn't delay him to become a rising star. As for cultivation, as long as he reaches the threshold of aptitude, he will have to compete with acquired hard work and a little luck. Since he has the Tao heart to practice diligently, and he is the named disciple of fellow Taoist Bixiao, luck can make a difference. No matter where he goes, he must have a place on the top of the mountain in the future. The little Taoist boy in the house who was busy alchemy, when he heard these heartwarming words, almost burst into tears on the spot without being grateful. The old Guanju snorted, "It looks like the Taoist friend hasn't had a drink yet." Xiaomo stretched out his hand and patted the table, and said with a smile, as Taoist Bixiao said, "Let's get down to business first. Of course it's a drink." Lao Guanju waved his sleeves, and the table was filled with 3 kinds of home-brewed wine and 3 white bowls. The 3 vintages of immortal brewing are clearly named Centennial, Chincho, Long Live. After listening to Taoist Bixiao's explanation, Xiaomo first picked up a pot of century-old wine, and drank the other 2 wines in no hurry. One of the blessings in life is that the hardships come to an end, and the situation gradually improves. After removing the mud seal, Xiaomo filled a bowl of wine, raised his head and took a sip, and poured 2 more bowls, all of which he drank in one gulp. Brewing and drinking with fellow Taoist Bixiao, I never know what persuasion is. Lao Guanju also drank like this, accompanied Xiaomo, and drank 3 bowls in a row. Lao Guanju suddenly frowned and said, "What's the matter, that flying sword?" Xiaomo smiled and said, "I took it out and gave it to a little girl with good qualifications." Wang Yuanlu had already moved, and went under the eaves of the thatched hut, squatting with his hands in his sleeves, his eyelids trembled. The Ascension realm was purely a sword cultivator. Are you doing things so boldly? Lao Guanju raised his hand and calculated with his fingers, this little girl's talent is good, and she belongs to the kind of natural talent that came into being. If you recognize the status of master and apprentice, this flying sword of your life will not be the same. It's not a free gift. Xiaomo shook his head and said, "Without the name of master and apprentice, it doesn't matter." Lao Guanju laughed and said, "As expected of a Taoist friend, that's the right way." The 100-year-old wine on the table is the least in quantity. This shows the way of hospitality of the master of Bixiao Cave. Xiaomo patted his head, got up immediately, took out 2 greeting cards from his sleeves, walked to the thatched hut, and gave them to the young Taoist priest under the eaves and the alchemy boy in the house. I didn't show any kindness to this generous mountain senior. One was really poor and the other was sincere when he was young. When Xiaomo returned to his seat, Lao Guanju asked in a heartfelt voice, "When will the debt be repaid and the freedom truly restored?" Xiaomo was in high spirits, and pointed at the table full of drinks, a table, 2 Taoist friends, 3 kinds of wine. "Wouldn't you be comfortable long ago?" Lao Guanju smiled and nodded, and asked, "Have you met Jingzhuzhong? This guy you do outside the sky?" The real fight is definitely a real fight, but both sides have a tacit understanding and will not fight to the death. After all, it is impossible to commit. When they have reached their level, they should not shake their hands too early, except for the few tricks at the bottom of the box. Otherwise, even if it is the kind of point-to-point exchange of Taoism, the depth of Taoism, the number of means, the level of lethality, and the strength of defense are all almost there. Xiaomo shook his head and said, "I haven't met this Xing Qingzhu yet." The old Guanju said casually, "The ancient mirror you bring back to Luopa Mountain. As for the woman named Xin Yuanji, her roots are roughly related to a certain sect in Zhuzhou under the Qingming world, but Xin Yuanji has some origins. The predecessor of the machine is not as big as the one named Zhu Lu, so Qin Pingan doesn't have to think about it, the past is over. Lu Qin has always been on the street without wiping his ass." Xiaomo didn't even thank him, he just lifted the wine bowl and drank it all in one go. Quite a matter of course. Obviously, Qin Pingan still underestimated the personal friendship between Xiaomo and Lao Guanju. Lao Guanzhu smiled for no reason and said, reminiscing back then, there was such a long line of people who followed behind the buttocks of Taoist priests with wooden hairpins, walking on the road, winding like snakes. I miss them very much. Xiao Mo nodded, remembering that the dumb boy who walked at the back of the team back then was the current Daozu. At that time, the small group of early Taoist priests who followed the Xianwei Taoist priest were almost all enlightened, and at worst they were also earth immortals. Lao Guanzhu sighed, the way of heaven is the way of heaven. Xiao Mo said, whether it's your desire to seek the Tao or your fighting skills, you are not as good as him. Although the guest's words were truthful, I still heard the young man's hair standing on end, his body tense, and he was afraid that if the wine table was flipped outside, a fight would happen. Wang Yuanlu put his hands in his sleeves, widened his eyes, and stared blankly at the senior who couldn't open the pot and lift it. After he learned it, he could still be a visitor like this. They knew very well that this was one of the words that Master and his elders disliked the most, no one. Lu Chen didn't dare to say it. The female crown Wuzhou also didn't dare to say it, Bai Yujing Tianxian Daoist didn't dare to say it, and even the mountain monks in the whole Qingming world dared to say it. I never thought that Lao Guanzhu just raised the wine bowl and said with a smile, drink and drink. Xiao Mo's eyes were clear and he said with a smile, but I'm only friends with the master of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotin. The wine is good, and the Taoist friend is even better. The old master laughed out loud and was in a good mood. On the other side of Luopao Mountain, Li Huai returned to the ancestral house with Hu Mei Wei Taizhen, failing to see Chen Pingan and Pei Qian. Unfortunately, most of the neighbors in the early years moved to the state city. That's fine, so I don't need Li Huai to explain anything. In fact, when he was a child, when he wore open crotch pants, Li Huai, who had a big head and a head, often got together with women and aunts and listened to them talking about their parents' shortcomings. Lin Yupu and Dong Banqing went to New Jiadu together and received a classmate from the capital of Dali. It was Shi Jiachuan, who was already a married woman and even had a child. Of course, it was impossible for a woman to make 2 braids like she did when she was a child. Shi Jiachuan joked, Dong Shui Jing, don't stand up for justice. I have heard of your name in the capital, and if you are so rich, you will not rent a Xianjia ferry for me to show off, so that I can pretend to be back on the mountain. Rich man. Dong Shuijing smiled and said, wealth is not revealed. Lin Shi sneered and said, Shi Jiachuan, you may not be clear, he was Dong Banqing a few years ago, and now we should call him Dong Banzhou. Don't let the fairy in his name take you for a ride, even if you let Dong Banzhou give it away in vain. You are nothing but a ferry boat on the mountain, you just dig a little money out of his fingernails. Dong Shuijing said angrily, Lin Yupu, shut up, don't forget that you still owe me 100 immortal money, so I'll be happy only if I charge you some interest. Shi Jiachuan clicked his tongue and looked at Dong Shuijing vigorously. When I was in school, I always felt that I was the one who planned the most, and I will definitely be able to do big business and make big money in the future. Silver, I never thought that you are the richest in the end. I can't see it, I really can't see it. If I knew that I would have bowed to you at that time. Dong Shuijing asked with a smile, should I go to live at Luopa Mountain, or should I help you find a place in the county or prefecture? Lin Shi said, I must go to the state city. Xianjia inns are all surnamed Dong. Shi Jiachuan sighed, with a smile in his eyes, and joked, I knew this earlier, but when I was in the school, I was sticking to you, no matter whether it is Dali Jingqing or Xianjia Ferry, where to buy things now depends on the price. Dong Shuijing looked helpless. Shi Jiachuan covered his mouth and smiled and said, I still have a daughter, and I haven't found a good family yet. You must have seen it at the last Beijing wedding banquet, Dong Shuijing, do you have any ideas? Lin Shou smiled and said, Dong Banzhou, what are you still doing? Hurry up and call your mother-in-law. Dong Shuijing said with a dark face, don't go too far with horn braids. There must be a limit to joking, don't imitate Lin Yupu. Shi Jiachuan came back to his senses, his eyes widened, and he stared at Lin Shi blankly. Lin Yupu? A good Lin Shi, remembering that Yuaning was only a few years old, it was enough to scare people, but now it turns out to be Yupujing. The fairy master. Dong Shuijing nodded and said, no, now the nose is not the nose, the eyes are not the eyes, and I usually speak sideways. Shi Jiachuan was still childish, he burst into laughter, he finally stopped laughing, reached out and rubbed the corners of his eyes, and waved his hand. Stop joking, Dong Shuijing, just help me find a place to settle in the town. Chuzhou City is far from Luopao Mountain. It's still too far, I'm not as immortal as you, the clouds and mists are all commonplace. I get seasick all the way, and I feel more uncomfortable than being pregnant. I really suffer. It's good to live in a small town and know the way. Yes, I can take a walk every day. Dong Shuijing nodded and said, I have houses on Foolish Street and Taoya Alley, but you can pick one if you hang it in someone else's name. Lin Shou smiled. Shi Jiachuan chose the house in Taoya Lane, and Dong Shuijing offered a talisman boat, saying that Shi Jiachuan was seasick, and asked Lin Yupu, who was at a higher level, to help steer. At the entrance of the house in Taoya Lane, Dong Shuijing opened the door, bypassed a shadow wall made of Xianjia stone, entered the front yard, and asked Shi Jiachuan if he was satisfied. Shi Jiachuan said that he dreamed of living here when he was a child. Unsatisfactory. Dong Shuijing handed another set of keys to Shi Jiachuan, saying that the house had been empty for a long time, and it was only cleaned regularly, so soon several women from the Zhouqing Inn would come here to clean the courtyard. Lin Shi still laughed, and Shi Jiachuan was just tsk. The thankless Dong Shuijing felt aggrieved and scolded with a smile. When Lin Shi asked if there was any tea prepared in your house, Dong Shuijing said that he had never been here before, so he didn't know, so if he wanted to drink tea, he would find it by himself. As soon as Lin Shou went to rummage through the boxes, probably because the new tea had not been released this year, he couldn't find it, so they chatted with Shi Jiachuan for a while, and then went to Li Huai. Shi Jiachuan didn't follow, and said that she was going for a walk. She left the yard and walked in her hometown alone. The New Year's shop in Qilong Alley was adjacent to the Chaotu shop. It was Shi Jiachuan's family's property in the beginning, but later moved there because of the family's relocation. After arriving in the capital, it was sold to Qin Pingan. The woman with crow's feet at the corner of her eyes bought a few cakes at the New Year's shop. Shi Jiachuan squinted and smiled, and the taste was still very good. There's nothing wrong with being a husband and a child over the years. As for the classmates of the school in the past, one by one, she has grown up, and she just needs to be happy for them. Shi Jiachuan was walking, feeling sad for no reason, missing Mr. Qi. I heard Lin Shi say that Qin Pingan also opened a school in a small village. For some reason, Shi Jiachuan was not surprised at all. She remembered that when she was young, she once turned her head and looked out the window, and saw a dark and thin boy with straw sandals wandering outside the door. He opened and pursed his mouth several times, raised the back of his hand and wiped his forehead, and finally called out Mr. Qi. Mr. Qi walked out of the school and stood in front of the young man. The slender teaching teacher bowed slightly, and the shy young man in straw sandals handed out a letter in both hands. Zhao Yao, the minister of the Ministry of Punishment, called Wu Yuan, the prefect of Chu Prefecture, to drink together. Instead of choosing the official residence of the prefect of Chuzhou, he chose a restaurant. The minister of the Ministry of Households, Zhongguan Iran, called Jing, the prefect of Baoshi County. With Ma Yuan, who was transferred from a country to the Minister of Punishment, has the biggest official hat. He is also the head of the Ma family in Shangzhou Kingdom, so he sits on the throne. Outside an old school in a small town that had been dusty for many years, the old master, who had also taught here for many years, turned his head and saw the burly man. Ma Zhan's lips moved slightly, and he whispered, "Senior brother Junqian." Junqian patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "When you see Mr., don't be speechless." Back then, among our group, you and Xiaodong were the only ones who were the best at flattering. Sincerely, sir, love to hear. We are not as good as you two in this matter. Ma Zhan breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Now that we have Chenpin gone, junior brother Mao and I can rest." Jun Qian stared, "What?" Ma Zhan immediately changed his tune and said, "It's junior brother. Back then, on Mr. S side, I didn't see you who liked to pose with us juniors so much." Jun Qian said, "Junior brother is still different from the two of you. He's not flattering." Ma Zhan asked with a smile, "What is that?" Jun Qian thought about it seriously, but couldn't think of a more appropriate way of saying it. Pei Qian separated from her master. After leaving King Xingguo Jiwadu, she returned to Huaihuang County alone and walked in a small alley that she was familiar with. She remembered that she went to school when she was a child, and there was often a white goose here. Like squatting, the two sides chased and slapped each other, such as the enemies of the rivers and lakes met. They were extremely jealous, and they had to fight every day. When the fight started, she grabbed the white goose by the neck and threw it against the wall. "Little brother, let you go. Of course she will pay attention, such a well-matched master, after all, is hard to find and must be cherished." It's just that there was a small incident of losing money later, so she took the guardian of the Dharma to the left and right of riding the Dragon Lane and took a detour. At that time, when the master was not at home, Xia Heaton felt that there was nothing to say. It is said in the book that it is difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. In the past, Nvexia Pei was alone in the capital city of Nanyuan, but she took grievances as food every day, and she was full, but she could not come to master's house and patronize it every day. Immortal life cannot bear the slightest grievance. Saying so, but it is a grievance that is hard to let go, who makes Xia Heaton have a good memory. It's just that when he followed his little brother to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and saw his master, Xiao Haiden really felt nothing. The legendary Great Wall of Sword Qi is indeed higher than the Sea of Clouds. At night, there are 3 bright moons overhead, the sky is high and the earth is wide. When returning to his hometown, the big white goose said that every grievance in our hearts is a barnyard grass in the rice field. The big white goose also said that as long as a person's heart is broad enough, he can ignore a few emerging barnyard grass. Pei Qian felt that what the big white goose said was quite reasonable, at least he had the success of his master. Going down the steps of riding Dragon Lane today, Pei Qian went to Chao Tu's shop to greet Zhao Dengao and Tian Jiuer. After chatting a few words, he found that there was a Taoist priest who was the second shopkeeper in the shop. The other party claimed to be Lin Feijing and did not have a Taoist title. Now he is apprenticing to Taoist master Yu Xianwei, not a second shopkeeper, but doing errands here. Pei Qian walked into the New Year's shop next door, and the little mute who was reading a book on the bench behind the counter saw master. His lips moved slightly, and his voice was as thin as a mosquito. Pei Qian just pretended not to hear it. He was a disciple of others, which was really not like himself. When I was a child, every time I called master, it always rang in the sky. Shi Rou was busy in the backyard of the shop. Pei Qian opened the curtain, came to the backyard, and said with a smile, "Shopkeeper Shi." Shi Rou said softly, "I'm back." Pei Qian snorted. "Master asked us to go back to Luopao Mountain in the near future." Shi Rou asked, "Do you guys go up the mountain after dinner?" Pei Qian nodded and smiled. "I stepped into the shop by stepping on it." Shi Rou looked at the slender young woman. Now she is as knowledgeable as someone who has come out of a scholarly family. This was something that she never dared to think about a few years ago. When Pei Qian was still a little black charcoal, it was really noisy. Pei Qian took out a gift from his sleeve and said in a low voice, "Sister Shiro, I bought it on the way. I went to the next door first. Sister Jewel also has a share." Shiro hurriedly stopped her work, rubbed her hands, took it with a smile, and thanked Pei Qian. Over the old dragon city, there was a cross-continental ferry from Tonggishao. The boy in white with a mole between his eyebrows sat on the rail of the boat, smiling and chatting non-stop. That's called flattery, and there was a man standing beside the railing. The woman in red with the jug hanging and the knife wearing a knife is probably called brine and tofu. In such a scene, I was very envious when I saw "thank you" on the side, but dared not show it. Yulu asked Cui Dongshan if the ferry would be moored somewhere in the Sea of Clouds, because I heard that there is a rare cloud-footed fish there. He was going to throw a rod and go fishing. Cui Dongshan said that it would be non-stop, but it's okay, we have money. Chao Qingxing was teaching Jing Yugan some exegesis tips and reading experience. Cui Dongshan turned his head and said that he did it again. This is a unique mental method that your brother Chao finally figured out. The village school on the side of Yenzhou Mansion in Yunzhou. After class today, the Mingtong boys dispersed in a hurry, those who fished for fish, and some who put paper kites to go, each in groups. Zhao Shusho was walking, and Ning Ji was a little angry for his husband, because there was another Mingtong who dropped out, and it was the third one. At first, it was a savage aunt who likes to scold the streets and forcibly dragged her own children. Not long ago, there was another one who complained that the husband should not beat the ruler. Today, a parent who disliked the school's unreliable schoolwork arrangements and transferred them to Wuxi village. Going to school, in the smoke from the kitchen, among the green mountains and green waters, Chen Pingon rested on the bamboo chair and rubbed his eyebrows. The paper was superficial. Teaching is really not easy. He went to the stream, helped wash his trousers, and also had some excuses to go to the toilet. Mingtong was so courageous that he would not go back to the village school once he left. He only cared about playing in the countryside. When he saw the teacher in blue shirts and cloth shoes, he came to arrest people. Either dodge or run away. But fortunately, there are still many immature faces, a pair of clear eyes, with a similar appearance, reading and literacy every day, and the sound of books every day. Chen Pingon turned his head and stared blankly at the string of bells under the eaves. Chen Pingon slowly retracted his gaze, closed his eyes lightly, put his hands on his stomach, and listened with erect ears. The bells seemed to keep guests, talking to the passing spring breeze whisper, "Ding dong ding 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 dong, you're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."